back and try something else. So Mr. Cohn, we will leave it up to you to go through the presentation. Mr. Cohn?
I'm on mute, aren't I?
Yes, you were.
You know, I can do this so many times, it doesn't matter. I keep making that mistake. Well, thanks everybody for being here. This is a presentation that we put together. You can go to the next slide, Doc. We involved quite a few folks. We really made sure to kind of surface information from every one of the building principals so that we could get a good sense of what the impact would be at each building with a variety of different options. So this is not really a clear, recommendation for anything so much as it is just wanting to make sure you guys have the facts about how various different possibilities could affect our buildings and our community. So these were kind of the different things that we thought about. Couple different options. So we could continue with our current system, leave it with our A and B day hybrid and our virtual. The second option would be to stick with this current system, but offer sort of a change request system where you might say, if we had space and if it was manageable without major impact to the schedule, you could put yourself on a change request list or something like that. The third option here would be allow shifts from hybrid to virtual or virtual to hybrid, but do so only if we gather some information from the community ahead of time and meet some particular threshold. You know, if 30% or 50% or whatever the chosen number would be, then you could try to move something. The fourth option is allow parents to make new choices for which mode they want. So just say at a certain point you can pick. And then the last option that we included here was the idea of bringing our hybrid cohorts together. So our A-B hybrid groupings would come back, so hybrid students would attend 4 days a week. So these are the four different things we looked at. So what you're going to see in our presentation, we're going to start by talking about the impact that this would have on the buildings across all levels. We'll do a couple details, and then we'll talk about some unanswered questions. So there are some things that we're not sure of that you as a board would want to consider. And then we have a few sample scenarios to go over to kind of look at if something was to change, here's how it would change. So we're going to start with, and please interrupt and slow me down if you need to, if I'm going too fast. So the first thing we looked at was impact that would affect kind of a lot of schools together. So these are impacts to students and families that seem to be pretty widespread across our building. So this was elementaries, middle, high school, meadows, across the board. One of the kind of biggest takeaways we looked at was that any shift in modes will lead to changes for possibly all students. Scheduling and classroom setup is such that when you make a change for a small number of kids, it sort of has a domino sort of web connection to so many other things that even if we had 10% of kids that wanted to change, it might end up causing an impact for far more than 10% of the kids.
Can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. Is that based on current strategy of keeping distance?
Yes and no. It definitely, if we keep distance, would have that impact. But even if we don't keep social distancing, it would require, in many cases, scheduling changes that might reshuffle who your teacher is, what hour your classes are, whether a class is still offered in this quarter that we thought would be offered under an old schedule. We've got some examples at the end that we hope will, they're a little, technical, but we think they'll help you get a sense of how this might look.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So the second bullet there that kind of goes along with this is that families' current experience will change even if they keep their mode. So for example, if I'm a family and I am hybrid and I'm happy with the hybrid plan, if we say open up to choice, and let's say 20% of families shift to hybrid, then that means we'll have to get creative and maybe have issues with social distancing, which then changes the plan that the parents that didn't want to change have. Does that make sense? So it'll alter their current experience. Some things we thought of as educators, this would be a pretty big disruption either way, whether you went from hybrid to virtual or virtual to hybrid. If it caused those changes in schedule, could be a pretty big disruption to the socio-emotional well-being of students and teachers. It's a lot for teachers to change and kind of redirect on. In addition, for students, if they were to lose their teacher and get a new teacher, that's pretty impactful. It looked like in most of the scenarios we looked at, there'd be pretty significant schedule changes. A lot of students, arguably most students, would end up with some new teachers, especially at the secondary level, but even at the elementary. Could lead to some imbalanced class sizes. So, situations where you've got, currently an even split across, you may, based on what's happening in the schedule, end up with certain classes that are much higher than others. Again, we'll have some examples later. For students with IEPs, our Ls, our 504 kids, this, right now, all of our providers have kind of worked to create a schedule that works in its current situation. And if we change that around, that means new plans for IEPs, new ways of trying to reach and accommodate our 504s. I'm not sure if this would necessitate revisiting IEPs or not, but for sure, something different with our plan for how we would accommodate. And then another one that students would experience is this is going to mean new logistics for lunches. Currently we're able to socially distance at lunch. That may not be the case if we did various changes. Might not be able to travel to your specials classrooms. It might be, specials on a cart that come to you. It may affect how free kids are to use the restroom, or how we would handle keeping everybody clean and doing those things. So these are the ones that we figured kids and families mostly would experience. And that's not necessarily on the school end. So this next set is school system and staff. So we're talking about impact now for the folks that work for NCSD. The first one is that it's possible that teachers would have to reset their classrooms. When you think about an elementary school teacher, teaching in third grade, I may need to learn all new students, assess their readiness, find out what their reading levels are, all of those things that take some weeks to get going early. So we're not sure, how much of a significant impact on learning that might have. There's definitely a cost factor. If more kids come back to hybrid, based on class sizes and whether or not we chose to keep social distancing, it may necessitate the hiring of new staff. There may be overtime involved for secretaries or people that need to do some of the background logistics. Overages and class sizes that end up being particularly high that we have to keep if that's a course we're going to offer. The third bullet point, I really cannot stress enough how complex this is. For the administrators to have to figure out a new master schedule, it is a pretty time-consuming scenario. So we're not even sure, at this point, if we were to say, let parents pick, no holds barred, pick what you'd like in November. We're not entirely sure at the elementaries how we would hold on to their current data. We don't do reporting at the quarter all the time. And so, what happens at the high school if a kid is taking a certain elective and 9 weeks in we shift and there's a new teacher or they have to pick a different elective? What happens? We can't really record a quarter of a course necessarily. So questions about that, that's what's meant by lost learning data. And as Bobby mentioned, any shift where we're going to increase our hybrid population, probably the largest issue there is that it's going to eliminate our ability to comply with social distancing guidelines. We can certainly still do things to try to socially distance our folks, but if even 10% changed, we're at that sort of 6 foot distance limit for most of our classes right now. And that was repeated by principals K to 12. So the flip side of that is if we ended up with kids heading toward virtual, we still have to maintain hybrid classes, so their class sizes would go down. But because there's still a course there with a teacher, then the virtual class sizes are going to go way up. And we may have, at the high school, there are some virtual class sizes already that are well beyond the 30s. And we could see that at lots of levels. Teachers shifting modes may be really disruptive. So for example, let's say we have an increase in hybrid population. Do we have enough teachers to come back and teach hybrid when some of them have health reasons why they're home? What would be the impact of shifting a teacher who has spent a whole lot of energy learning a virtual approach to teaching and then pulling them into hybrid? That would be a pretty tough flip, and maybe even a tougher flip the other way, trying to get a hybrid teacher to suddenly learn and be able to go fully virtual. So the full 4-day return, obviously that one is an increase to our hybrid population, obviously. So that would be something where we'd have to really consider not social distancing. And I think doing that would cause teachers and families to reconsider the placement they chose. So if I chose hybrid and then we're going to bring kids back and eliminate social distancing, then you may have some families that decide they don't want hybrid anymore. You may have teachers who currently have some health risk, but are able to teach with social distancing that may opt for EFMLA if they didn't have social distancing to protect them. So I know I'm going kind of quick. Everybody following all right? Okay. All right, Doc. So those were kind of the significant impacts. From there, we kind of looked at what would be our needs, as a school system, what kind of things would we need in order to enact really any of these changes. So significant staff hours, again, I don't think I can overstate this one. In order to process these changes, you would have to retask your administrators. In the summer, it took a little over 3 weeks for administrators to build a hybrid schedule. And that was with nothing else, just fully focused on schedule building. They were working, every hour of every day was directed toward that. So now with the other tasks of running a building and managing kids, you'd really need to find some way to retask admin or get some support to manage some of the other things. Secretaries may be working overtime to get move kids around in MyStar. We thought about, would we need a teacher workday for teachers if they need to shift from one mode to another or prepare for a whole new set of kids? That might require a day or two to shift, both just in work and in classroom setup. And support staff like counselors and psychologists and social workers who would have whole new schedules of kids as well. And there's a lot of compliance components in there that we want to make sure we're not missing. So, this is also not easy to predict exactly what we would need, but for sure, there would probably be some needs in cost and time there. So I kind of covered the second one there, the need for teacher work days to prepare for a new mode. Third, we may need to reach out to Oakland schools or some of our other partners that we work with on various tech platforms to find out, can we develop some kind of record keeping approach that could save sort of students pre-shift progress. So before we made a shift, how are we taking a snapshot of that information? One example we used when I talked to the high school, when a student comes in from another district, for example. They'll have a list of what their grades currently were. So Joey was taking civics and he was getting a B minus. Well, in reality, it's very hard for us to know how do I start him with a B minus and how do I calculate that in? To imagine doing that on a large scale for a lot of kids would require some complex planning, I think. Principals reported really needing access like on demand, like getting a human being in a room with the secretaries to be able to kind of like a war room type support to try to put this together, because of how many questions we may have with our LMS and with MyStar. As far as the numbers, as far as learning about like the commitments to what parents would want, if we did a survey where we were asking parents to commit, opening it back up for them to commit to a mode, we would really be asking for that information to be open for a set amount of time. And we would need a commitment really from the district that there's got to be a hard stop on the survey, and then some sort of common responses. What are our district's responses to parents who trickle in later and say, I want to change, or I didn't see it, or something? Because what we learned from the first time, we know that our staffing is dependent on these numbers. And when they start to change, it makes, pretty big issues with class sizes and course offerings and things like that. The administrators, I think, were being very, I don't think how generous, they're being generous enough with themselves really, but they said they could get it done in 3 weeks. They said they need a 3-week minimum lead time. And I think that would be working real hard on their part, but to be able to say, hey, we have our commitment numbers, we would need that data 3 weeks prior to an implementation of kids with a new schedule. So it would have to have at least 3 weeks at the minimum. Then as far as other needs, we're looking at things like we would need some district guidelines as far as, if we do have more kids coming back to hybrid, we can no longer do social distancing with some travel, with lunch in the buildings. And so we would need the district to have kind of a K-12 approach. What do you want us to kind of do for lunches and travel? What will be our new guidelines? And then we also realized how important it's going to be to have really clear communication and really redundant communication to parents. We need to talk to them a lot and clearly about exactly what it is that they're being offered and exactly what that will look like. And that does become difficult, in part because, when you don't know what people are going to say, when we don't know what direction our numbers will shift toward or away from hybrid, it's hard to be able to guarantee parents what something would look like when it depends on their choices. So some things up in the air. So some of the questions that, as I spoke to principals, we kind of bantered around because we weren't really sure. They're things that I think that you guys as a board are going to want to consider. One is this question of, what is the community mandate? We definitely started from a place of saying, we want to have parents have the ability to make a change to their placement. But if 20% of parents want to change, but that impacts 85% of parents, and most of them didn't want to change, then are we really responding to what the community wants? So that's going to kind of be a tough thing, is asking what that mandate is. And that kind of connects to the second question, which is, do the benefits of choice for a few outweigh upheavals and stability and their current experience for many? And again, we'll show you some examples here shortly. So we thought about, could we consider something like a change threshold? If we did a survey and 6% of parents wanted to change, does that tell us that maybe we wouldn't make that change? What would the number be that you might want before you're ready to try that? That was just a thought that some of the principals had. one of the concerns, we can communicate as much as we want, but we really want to make sure and are curious, will parents understand that no matter what their choice is, it is likely that their child's experience will be dramatically altered. A new schedule, a new teacher, changes in course offerings, in specials, in their lunch experience. We really want people to understand that if a change is offered, that changes, you can't opt out of the change, I guess is what I'm suggesting. Somebody raised the question of how will the cohort assignment be affected by the change? We are currently kind of imbalanced in our AB cohort. Nicole Carter at the high school, I believe you guys have a really high A day. I might be wrong on that, but I think it was a lot more kids in the A day than the B day. That may not be the case at every building. Some buildings are going to have more kids in the B day. So if we offer a change, many of these buildings are saying there is no more space to add kids to an A cohort day, but there is space in a B cohort. So how do we kind of factor that issue in with a possibility of offering a change in placement? And then the last one is how do we think our community is going to respond if we do make a decision that eliminates or reduces social distancing, whether it is in a large format, like having kids come back 4 days a week, or whether it is opening it up to choice, because even if, like I said, if 20% of parents make a change, we'll have classrooms that have 18, 19, 20 kids in it, which I don't think we can easily do a 20 or a 6 foot distancing at that point. So those were kind of our sort of community questions. And then Doc, if you'll, there we go. So the other ones, these are kind of focused a little bit more on the district employees. How will this impact our teachers and other staff? On one hand, there's a very real question of burnout for many of our staff members. There are quite a few that are at their limit for change. And while I am confident they will charge forward and do their best, I do worry about what that impact is for them in the short and the long run. Following that same idea, what would be the impact of these changes to learning and socio-emotional health? Kids really invest in their teacher, and to get a new teacher, to end a relationship with one teacher, beginning relationships, then you think about your peers, kids that might be in your classroom now that you've made friends with, you've got to end those relationships and build new ones. And this is all in a time where COVID is making relationship building tougher to do because of social distancing. One worry that we had, the question of should we offer a change of mode at all? We love the idea of the choice, but there's a bit of concern where principals have said, our buildings are functioning. We have managed to offer a virtual and a hybrid experience that, while not perfect, is working right now. And there's always that unknown of, will we be able to keep it working if we make some changes? So we talked about what data, do we know what parents want? Do we need to wait for more data from parents, more data on where COVID is going? There were some questions about us being on the edge of flu season. And of course, some of the numbers nationwide are ticking up. So there was some worry about if we made a change toward hybrid and then had to change back again, what would the impact of that be? And that brings us to this question of, would we have to consider multiple shifts? If we make a change once, is that it? Because if our plan is to shift kind of on a quarterly cycle, I don't know that that's sustainable by the system, really. And so that led people to ask, is November the right time, or do you wait until flu season kicks in and we see where things are going? The semester might be a little bit more natural, especially for the 3,000 kids from 7 to 12 that tend to have a more natural shift at semester with new, courses. And then another smaller one was, we're tracking student growth data, and we're already seeing data that it shows us that COVID's impacting our kids, will that data become harder to get or less valid if we're shifting teachers and moving things around? So these are some of the questions we have. We don't know the answers, but they're things we think should be considered. So a couple of grade level specifics here. At the elementary level, some key big takeaway changes. Kids may lose access to some specials. So if you're taking certain specials now, and then you have to be in a new classroom, and the specials they can't travel to anymore, there may be a scenario where kids lose access to specials or have to repeat a special that they've already had, because that's the way the kind of schedule falls out in moving kids around. And then you'll see in most of these a possible change in the lunch experience. Do we reduce social distancing in the classroom? Do the kids eat in a classroom? Or do we change the social distancing requirements in the cafeteria? So at Meadows, similar things, may lose access to specials, may have to repeat, may have to change. Currently, they're able to travel to specials because they've got social distancing that allows them to do that. But if the social distancing is no longer guaranteed, then they would probably try to keep the kids in rooms, which means not being able to be in your specials room for specials. At the middle school, there's the possibility of losing access to some electives. We'll show you a pretty detailed example here in a minute that will show you how that can sometimes happen. And then we're concerned about record keeping issues. How do we transfer grades? And again, that change in lunch experience. And you'll see the high school is pretty similar. Same concerns about losing access to some classes. When they ran a few schedules and kind of looked at what would happen if we had certain changes, they even ran into scenarios where what if, a required course that was available third hour when you were taking it is now no longer available third hour, and you've got other important IB or AP courses that you don't want to lose. Could it be that there's no space for you to fit into a required course? So there are definitely, those similar issues there at the high school as well, but they carry the added challenge of being credit bearing. So then we looked at specifically the question of bringing kids back for a 4-day return. Lots of pros as well to this, but some of the things to consider are that hybrid students and teachers can directly connect for face-to-face contact. So instead of being asynchronously kind of doing work every other day, they get to have face-to-face interaction with their teacher 4 days a week in person and 1 day virtually. We would not, if we did that, we're talking about enough kids in the building that we wouldn't be able to enforce a 6-foot separation. Parents and students who made the hybrid choice, expecting distancing with their going to school, may not support this model, because in this scenario, their kids would be at school, but they wouldn't have the social distancing. And then that goes to, the same question, would some of our teachers struggle with this? Hybrid teachers that are going to feel pretty uncomfortable with the number of students in their classrooms. Just from, unscientific surveys of the staff, I can definitely say that it would cause some worry among our staff if they were not able to do social distancing. So these are some hybrid class size considerations, different examples at different schools. So for example, if you were to bring all the kids back, currently in K4 example, hybrid A day kids, there's 13 kids in a classroom. 10 kids come on B day. If we combine those together so that they're all attending together, you'd have a classrooms of 23 in the K4 level. At Meadows, you've got, lower numbers there in the hybrid B. Combine those together, you'd get 27. At the middle school, we'd be just a little bit past contractual max if we brought them back. In high school, you'd combine to be 29 as well. But in all of these scenarios, we're bringing them back would fit our, generally be contractually acceptable, but are certainly going to reduce our ability to do social distancing. So kind of the big takeaway with hybrid classes, some great positives, 4 or 5 if you consider it with online days of face-to-face contact with your teacher. Consistent live interaction with teachers. The kids have interaction now, but to be able to have that be live and face-to-face is a pro of bringing everybody back. Concerns, lack of social distancing, and fairly large middle school and high school classes. They'd be right at the edge of what the contract bears out. So we kind of looked at a couple of specific things that might have an impact, some sort of case scenarios, if you will. So here's an elementary example. So what you're looking at here in your upper left side there, that is the current numbers at Deerfield in 3rd grade. So you've got 3 classrooms, each one has 28 kids, 2 are hybrid, 1 is virtual. So in this scenario, if there's a small shift from virtual to hybrid, so if just, I think I made 7 kids move, you would now, even with just 7 kids coming back, you would be looking at a virtual class of 21, that's Ms. B. And that of course means that those kids are going into the existing hybrid classes, which would put them over a contractual max. That might mean hiring another teacher. That might mean looking for a new classroom space because, if they were all here, that averages out to 28 and you'd have 3 classrooms. But in this scenario, you get these imbalances that can lead to hiring or needing new spaces.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
This is Bobby again. So obviously the numbers bear out the same, but if you're saying that if there's room for a shift, you would allow a shift. So what does that bear out to be in terms of room? What does that mean?
So I can't say that we did enough research to know exactly what it would be for everybody, but Doc, if you would go back, let's see, to your previous slide, I think 2 up. 1 more. So my best answer to this is if you look at the Meadows building example, you'll see that hybrid B has 11 kids. If that was an average at their building, well, then that hybrid B might be able to accommodate another 3 or 4 kids if we're still on the AB model. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking like how that end up getting determined. For the students, like, is that a lottery? Is that a first come first? Like,
that would be a challenge. That's something that
right.
Don't love the idea because it doesn't feel like you're giving an equitable thing to all parents. However, if that allows some small shift while still keeping the boat floating without making major changes to the schedule, that was kind of where that came from. But you're right, there's not an easy, I don't think there's an easy answer to it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So if you go 1 more, so this would be a large shift in this scenario. And I will say, in talking to the elementary principals, their feeling, again, no scientific surveys here, but their general feeling was there might be more of a move toward hybrid at the younger grades. And then at secondary, there may be more of a move to virtual as parents are kind of feeling like their kids are handling the virtual stuff fairly well. So if this is the case, and you could have a large shift from virtual to hybrid, then you run into scenarios like this. So in this scenario, you had 19 kids wanted to move. Well, you have to still keep your virtual class because it's a course and we can't just, not teach those 9. So that's 9 virtual kids. The other 19 then get split up amongst Ms. A and Ms. C, and that ends up at massive classes that we would really be doing a disservice if we didn't get another teacher in this scenario. And in some of these buildings, there aren't necessarily ready to go classrooms with those things because the virtual classroom teacher is still teaching in a classroom and filming their whiteboards and their books and their manipulatives and things like that. So it would probably lead to some pretty complex opportunities for us there. So this would be the other way. Let's say that instead there was and I just did a large shift in this example, but let's say they shifted to virtual. Surprised us because who knows, the COVID numbers were going up and people are worried, and so they shift the other way. If that's the case, it's the opposite of the last slide. So you've still got these hybrid classes that have dropped in number. And so those 16 hybrid kids for Mr. A would be coming 8 on day A and 8 on day B. But all those other kids have to go to virtual, and you'd have a massive 51 kid class size, again, if you didn't hire another teacher. So the kind of takeaway here is that we've somehow managed a balance that seems to be working by having 50%, roughly 50% of the population virtual and 50% hybrid. We've been able to build for that. If that imbalances in either direction, then it will cause imbalances to classrooms that we may need to solve with hiring folks. The challenge there would be if, when the pandemic ends, you would not still need that level of staffing. So I'm going to ask Angie Southworth, who's the Dean of Students at Novi Middle School, if she'll walk through this middle school scheduling illustration. So it's fairly technical, but I think it'll help you, if you don't know scheduling well, it'll help you get a sense of how moving a few kids can have kind of a domino effect. So Angie, you want to go ahead and take over?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I was trying to kind of illustrate what it would look when we say an impact, when we say a domino effect, what does that actually look like? So first, just an understanding of the middle school schedule. Our students have 6 classes and an academic 20. Of those 6 classes, 2 are electives, and our electives could either be year-long for 8th graders or 7th grader music, or the 9-week quarter rotation. So I tried to pick a small, what would be considered a small change of 25 students who are all in 8th grade, nice and simple, wanted to change from hybrid to virtual, and what that would do. So 25 kids would equal 1 section of each of the required classes, which are ELA 8, US History, and Science 8. So we would need to take one of each of those sections and move it from a hybrid to a virtual course. So this does create 25 places in the classes from which they're removed. So that does offer some space for us. However, it will not be an equal distribution. It's not like they're all in that same ELA 8 class. That the virtual kids are all in that same, I'm sorry, the hybrid kids aren't all in that same hybrid class that's flipping to virtual. They're coming from different places. This also doesn't equal 1 math class because we offer different levels of math for our students. It would impact it differently. So of those 25, I try to do like a proportional idea that of those 25, roughly 15 would be moving from math 8, 8 would be coming from algebra 1, and 2 from geometry. So this doesn't equal 1 course to possibly flip, which means that they would have to go into the same level math class, but either create an overage somewhere with a math class, squeeze them in somewhere in order to get them the math that they are, on level for. So what happens with those ELA science and history classes? So currently let's say this is the course, the ELA section that we're going to change from hybrid to virtual. Currently there's 28 students enrolled in that hybrid course who did not choose to change from hybrid to virtual. So they want to stay hybrid. All 28 of those kids, there's only 2 possible spots to move them on an A day because we are heavier on the A day than we are the B day. So not only will it impact who their ELA teacher is, but because there's only 2 spots for them to go, we have to move them in different hours. So then it starts to impact their other classes as we move those. The same thing happens for the US history class. There are a few more spots and areas for that. But again, we can only move within that same hour a few kids. So it's going to start impacting their other hours and their other courses. Science, for some reason, we ended up very heavy on the A day, and that there isn't any space in classes. They're already at the 6-foot distanced capacity on the A days. So those are going to really start to impact and start to change their other classes as we look for hours where there is space where those the hybrid kids moved out to virtual. Excuse me. So what does this mean for electives? So like I said, there are 2 elective rotations. Our 2 year-long elective rotations or electives for 8th graders are world language and music. For world language, proportionally, those 25 kids, 8 would be enrolled in Spanish 1, 2 in French 1, 1 in German, and 1 in Japanese. All of these languages, all of the virtual courses are already at a max, some already over to 33 students. So those 8 Spanish 1 students are creating very large virtual classes. Same with the French and the German. German and Japanese would obviously have a smaller impact, but both of the French 1 classes are already 30 and 31. For the music, there's more room to move. So music really wouldn't have a huge impact other than just making sure their schedule worked to get that virtual music class with the math that they chose and those other impacts there. So here's where it really gets tricky. The elective rotations. So roughly 16 of those 25 kids would have an elective rotation. When setting the schedule, what you're seeing over that colorful thing on the left is how I made sure that each quarter a student had an elective rotation to go into. So if you look where it says quarter 1, that's a PE, happens to be a 7th grade one, but a PE 7th grade hybrid. So then for quarter 2, they have to do the computer 7 hybrid. For quarter 3, they go to health, and for quarter 4, they go to Spanish 7. So those 4 classes are linked together. So as these 25 kids come out of some of these classes, it's impacting it, and then they have nowhere else to go during that hour, because if I flip those into virtual mode, one, they're not all coming from those classes, so all those hybrid kids have to move. And as you can see, I don't know if at the bottom where it says Japanese 7, Spanish 7, Spanish 7, there is no Spanish 7 hybrid in that time. So those kids that selected the quarter 4, had selected Spanish 7 and are in that quarter 4 class no longer have a place to go. So they would have to move hours, which is then going to further impact their schedules. So again, 25, I think, was a pretty reasonable number to start with. And we were kind of seeing hybrid to virtual as being a request. So just from 25 kids who are choosing, our families are choosing to change modalities, it's going to impact a minimum, and this is a conservative estimate, a minimum of 85 other students' courses who did not ask for a change, who are happy with their schedule and want to continue on the path that they're on. So at least 85 other students are going to have schedule changes because of this. So it's not just a 25 to 25, it slowly starts to impact everything else, especially when you get into that elective rotation, because then they really have to change hours. So as Andy kind of illustrated before, all of these impacted students will get new teachers and they'll have new protocols to learn and potential learning loss. The impact to the electives is quite big since they have linked quarter classes. And again, just back to that safe spacing piece of it. So.
So thank you, Angie. We know that was pretty thick and is not necessarily going to be an easy thing for you to digest on a quick listen. But what we hope that it did was really help people understand the kind of complex Jenga game that is trying to build a schedule. So we know bringing our kids back would be great for kids. We would all obviously like to have everybody back and have this pandemic over with. But as we're trying to balance what different families want, what's safest and what's feasible with what we can actually do, things like that, I think really help illustrate the complexity. So,
and Andy, I'll say that in the presentation so far, I mean, this is a lot. And if you're a layperson, a lot to digest of the different things that go into it, these changes. And what we would really love, and what every teacher I know in the district would love more than anything, is to have all of our kids 5 days a week. the learning losses that have occurred, the social emotional challenges and aspects, the instructional aspects, there is absolutely nothing that we would want more. That tension is real. And we're also, and I know Kathy Ferris is on this call, or a nurse, and the tension of how do we make sure that we attend to and are responsible in serving our students from a health standpoint as well. And I do think what the presentation is showing is that almost a buyer beware standpoint of when these changes are made, there are consequences and things that happen throughout. And I think just making sure of that. I'll go back to a comment I made in the July 30th meeting, talking about if we wanted to do something and bring as many, for instance, of our K-4 kids back as possible, it may require us spreading out, if social distancing is important, to different buildings in the district. I can tell you that many community members took umbrage with the statement that I made and were very upset that I would even suggest that. But that is the reality. I believe that it is completely our role to be as honest and straightforward with our community as possible. But I think underlying all of this is our own deep need and desire to have all of our kids back with our teachers and with us as soon as possible. But perhaps Dr. Matthews or Kathy at some point would like to weigh in as well on what they're facing as they weigh these things out. So thank you, Mr. Combe, and everyone else for putting this together. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Sure.
Yep,
Thank you.
Andy, we'll let you kind of go through the rest of the presentation, then we'll come back and to everyone, and Kathy and I can kind of weigh in on some of the issues related to health that we see. So
Okay.
Go ahead, Andy.
Great. We are getting close to the end here. So high school, just wanted to throw one more kind of thing. They're kind of big notes as far as what their scheduling looks like. So Doc, if you want to go to the next slide there.
Certainly.
So for the high school, they kind of wanted to put sort of a broad, take kind of what we looked at there in detail at the middle school and look at it, apply it to the high school and multiply that a bit. Their scheduling is a year-long puzzle that they start working on in February normally to prepare for the following year. And so usually once you set it up, one change is going to impact a lot of other things. So typically student choice drives that schedule. They offer kids what we call a course selection, is literally their choice of what they'd like to do. So you take those course selections, multiply them by the number of kids, and you have 12,000 individual requests that need to get fit into a puzzle that functions with our staffing and with kids. So the more choice we give, the more complexity there is. In a typical year, they've got this down. This is something that they're very good at. When we try to make changes, it's usually these are things we haven't really dealt with that kind of thing in the middle of a year before. So it's a pretty meticulous process. And they had mentioned that even in regular school circumstances, it can take months to complete. So for us to do it in 3 weeks would probably, we think we could pull it off, but we also think that it could be, there's going to be some unforeseen challenges for sure, some problems we didn't see coming. So if I was gonna ask you to take this whole presentation and put together your elevator takeaway, what would you explain? I would say that these are kind of the 4 big takeaways as far as shifting modes. So the first one that I think if our goal is to be truly transparent to our families is that most families would likely experience schedule changes regardless of whether they specifically chose to move or shift modes. So even if they did not want to change, they're going to probably have a schedule change of some kind. Statistically, that's very likely. Secondly, families really need to understand that the hybrid experience is going to change for everybody if more kids come back to hybrid, right? So if people are currently happy with social distancing and 15 kids and the current scenario, well, if more kids come back to hybrid, then that's not really what it's going to be. And so not only does that change the experience for those already in it, but a parent saying, I want to switch to hybrid thinking they're going to get the experience that they're hearing kids currently have, it may not be. If a lot of people shift to hybrid, that may not be what they get. The third one here, if even a small shift in families from virtual to hybrid happens, then that 6-foot social distancing really can't be guaranteed anymore. We're pretty much at our max spacing wise, and that seemed to be the case in a lot of buildings. And then the last one really is to just, to be completely honest, this is something that is literally unprecedented in education, and we would be not being completely honest if we didn't say that there are going to be some implications to this change that we can't predict. Staff or families who don't want this change, what will they do? We're not sure. And so those are some things that we just thought would be concerning. And I guess the last word on this, Doc, I think on the last slide is just whatever the board decides, it's going to be really critical to communicate with the community so that they know what their options are and what that will look like if they choose whatever the options end up being. So that's it, Doc.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Angie. Thank you to all the administrators who participated in developing that proposal. Kathy Ferris is with us this evening, and I'll let her kind of address some of the things that she's seen during our 1 month of experience here with both our hybrid and our virtual students. But Ms. Ferris, you want to kind of give some perspective from a nurse and health perspective?
Sure. Can you all hear me? So when we had the cases pop up at the high school and recently this week at one of the elementaries, what happens is the process starts by me contacting Oakland County, reporting that case, and then the investigation starts. So when the investigation starts, it's kind of given to Oakland County, but we have to provide seating charts, we have to provide lunch charts, we have to provide recess documents of, if there's social distancing. We have to provide all of those things to kind of prove to the Oakland County Health Division that we're doing the social distancing. And the reason that they require that is because if you are social distance, then you don't need to quarantine if you're within less than 6 feet apart. Less than 6 feet apart for more than 15 minutes. You don't need that quarantining piece. So we have to explain that to them and prove kind of what is going on in our buildings. One, that we're proving that it's not happening in our buildings, but then we have to prove so that the contact tracers can be contacted to, again, further that investigation and let them, families and other families, know who's going to be quarantined, because we do not make those decisions, okay? So if we were to be then less than 6 feet apart, then that would impact our kids and our classes being more often quarantined. We would have to go, if we were 3 feet apart, it would be who's sitting around those kids within the 3 feet. If it's in a recess situation that we had way more kids out on recess, we would have to look on who those kids were playing with more often. If we had more kids at the lunch tables, it would be more kids impacted that may be quarantined. It may be staff that were quarantined more often if they're teaching more kids in those classes. So it will impact us dramatically, I feel, if we have to go to less than 6 feet apart. Now, do I want my kids in school? Absolutely, we all do. But until the restrictions are lifted by the governor and the Oakland County Health Division and all of those steps, and they recommend the social distancing, what we've been doing to keep our kids safe, that is my take on what will happen if we don't social distance at this time.
So this afternoon, we had a Oakland County Superintendent's Association meeting, and the Oakland County Health Division was there. And they have provided guidance for in-person instruction to us. And this is based on the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services guidelines, and also Oakland County Health Division guidelines. And they reiterated today that we're in the C level of the matrix, and in the C level of matrix, it says if there's no cases of COVID in a building, in-person instructions allowed with strict mitigation measures. And mitigation measures include as much social distance as you can have, wearing masks, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, all those things that we're doing. If there are cases in the building, they would consider reducing the density in affected buildings after cleaning and contact tracing. And so, as has been suggested, we want our kids back at school. But having said that, if we decide to bring more kids back to school, the board is going to have to decide that social distancing is no longer a priority for the district. And so we could certainly survey our community to see, we could survey our staff to see, but there is no evidence that I've seen, and as you know, I've been tracking the numbers for a long time, that the numbers are any lower now than they were when we approved this in August. There are districts that are returning to school. They were all virtual, and now they've decided that they should have kids in school. Some districts are returning completely, 4 days a week, full classrooms. Other districts are returning in a hybrid format. Some districts are maintaining their current program. Where we are is that legislation that was approved by the Michigan legislature and signed by the governor said that the board had to approve an extended COVID learning plan, which you did last week, September 24th. From there, the board has to every 30 days renew the extended COVID learning plan. Our extended COVID learning plan identified that there were two options for parents. One was the hybrid option with social distancing, mask wearing, disinfectant wipes, the hand sanitizer, all those things, and the virtual option for parents and their children. That was in our extended COVID learning plan. So the 30-day requirement, the board will need to approve to either continue moving forward with that or institute changes at the October 15th meeting, which is coming up in 2 weeks, because you don't have another meeting after that in October. And so the administration will bring a recommendation to the board. Back in August, we talked about November 6th, that we would run our plan through November 6th. And then we would, I had indicated that we would give parents another option. Based on the conversations that I've had with administrators, I don't believe that that's wise or feasible on November 6th to give parents options to change, as you can see by some of the information that was shared this evening. What I might suggest is that we would look to extend this, the current plan, through the end of first semester, which is towards the end of January. As you know, in November, we have Thanksgiving break. In December, we have our holiday break. And then we come back in January. And if the board were desirous of a change, it seems to me it would be more appropriate for us to ask for commitments from families in December, and then to look to reshuffle the deck, if you will, at the end of January. But ultimately, this is the board's choice, but the administration will bring a recommendation to you at the October 15th date. But at this point, I believe the recommendation would not be to allow changes after November 6th, but to extend that minimally to the end of January. But again, that's a decision point that the board will need to make on October 15th. So with the team that we have assembled here this evening, if any of the board members have questions or concerns that they would like to ask, they can certainly ask them tonight. If you have questions or concerns that pop up after tonight, you can certainly email me and I will reach out to our team and we would provide answers. Dr. Rustin.
Members.
Yep.
I'm guessing some of the people who haven't been on here before don't know that I have to do this because it just tells you that I've been sitting here too long without talking. But I'm sure everybody has a few questions. I have two at the tip of my tongue. I'll start by asking you, Dr. Matthews, do you think hearing that a shift in modalities completely, even with 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 students, would be super challenging? Do you think there's an opportunity to survey our community members, our parents, and maybe even some of our older students to find out some of the challenges that they're facing? So you're not really asking them, would you like to go to hybrid or would you like to go to virtual? But maybe what are some of your successes and some of your challenges that you're facing within the mode that you're currently in? So that instead of, jumping from the cruise ship to the, rowboat or whatever's happening, you're just finding out how we can make the boat that they're in seem a little more stable for them. Because I'm not so sure that parents just want to jump ship. I think maybe they just have some individual concerns that could be addressed without reshifting the whole thing. So that's one ask that I have. I'll let you comment on that, and then I have a question for Kathy Ferris.
Okay, certainly I think it's important for us to ask our parents and our students what's working well and what things can be improved. I know that we've had multiple conversations with our teachers group about what Wednesdays can and should look like, and we're going to we have a kind of a new plan for Wednesday that would provide teachers a little more time for some cooperative planning, but also provide a more consistent instructional period for our students as well. Part of the struggle that we've had so far at the high school is the state has required us to provide testing for students at the high school, and those have been on Wednesdays, and so the Wednesdays have been a little disrupted during September anyway. But I certainly think it is important for us to get some feedback from our parents and from our students about what's been working well and what challenges there are and how we might be able to improve those.
And Dr. Matthews, if I may, in speaking with students as well, we've had student focus groups as well as speaking with parents. This is far less than an ideal educational situation. And I think it's really important that parents hear this, that we know that this is not the best way to educate kids. I want everyone to know how much we empathize with you as parents and how much as professional educators it hurts us to not be able to do things that we know we need to do for our children, especially when we're thinking the K-4 bandwidth. I know Dr. Matthews and I have talked to several parents, teachers, students, teaching a kindergartner, first grader, second grader, third grader how to read and write in a virtual or even a hybrid setting is a challenge. And I will say, however, I am so incredibly proud of the job our teachers are doing. Steve and I have had the pleasure of walking into classrooms that are virtual kindergarten classrooms. And you would think it was a television production going on when you walked in, the props, the dancing, the singing, the everything. I mean, pulling out all the stops to try to connect with our children. And I do believe that I need parents to know that we empathize with you from that piece. And please know that we fully understand that the best way to teach kids is together and with great teachers. And some of the initial data that we're seeing is some precipitous drops of learning in math, especially in the past 6 months or so, which makes sense because teachers matter, schools matter. And I think we all know that. So again, to all the parents out there, thank you for the struggle that you're engaged with, but please know that we are fully aware of that. Thanks.
Dr. Weber. My second question, real quick, and then I will just turn it over to any board member who has a question, is for Kathy. First of all, we appreciate you. We appreciate all the hard work you're doing. I'm sure every time the phone rings, you just want to close your eyes and hope that it's not one of those phone calls. But can you give a little bit of an indication? You know, we've been lucky. We've had 9 cases and we had to take a pause for 2 days, which was really for our virtual students nothing. And for our hybrid students, they received synchronous learning. So that was wonderful. But can you give an indication if we were in a non-social distance environment and we did have those 9 cases, approximately, and I know this isn't like scientific, how many maybe classrooms or students would have been affected in buildings or classrooms or students have had to not be in school? I know there was some sports teams, but if we were just strictly looking at classrooms due to being non-social distanced.
So even if you took the 9 students, because it was in a, close knit period, so those 9 students, we kind of like did a board, right? We did a board, we put the kids' names on it, we did all the teachers, we could try to figure out things and commonalities, and there wasn't really any commonalities in this school. So if the social distancing hadn't happened in those classrooms, 9 times 6 hours, that's really the potential for 54 teachers to be impacted, along with so many students. There could be 4 around each student. So that's 4 times 54 classes. That could be over 120, 150, 160 kids that may need to be quarantined if they were not within the 6 feet distance around them. Would it be all classes? Maybe not. But in an elementary setting, it might be all classes because they do a little bit more. If they're, if there's 25 in a classroom, then they're a lot more situated together. So that may impact an elementary school a little bit more. But really, I mean, if you would have to look at all the schedules and everything, it might be 38 teachers that might be impacted from those 9 kids. But really the potential could be 9 times 6 hours if those teachers were not being able to social distance. If the kid was in the front row, they're teaching from the front row, it could have that potential.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any board members have any questions that I can call on you? Mrs. Murphy?
Danielle, we can't hear you.
Hi, I'm still here, I promise.
Well,
Mrs.
you called
Murphy?
on, yeah, hi, you called on
You
me,
were
so I
just
guess.
leaning up like you were going to say
Well,
something, so I just thought I would let you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Danielle, for prompting me. I did think, like, as I listened to the presentation, it looks like you guys did a ton of work, and I appreciate all the thought and all the effort that went into thinking through all the possible scenarios. But it really did sound like you were trying to develop your scenarios based on info that maybe we don't have. Like, part of it, I heard like what kind of support Oakland schools could offer, what do parents want, who and how many would shift, the guidelines for lunch and travel, and the communication factor. I don't know if now we can get receipt for communication from parents, like if there's receipt of email or if you can tell if parents opened emails. I don't know if that's on their end. I'm guessing that it is, but it seems to me like that there may be some things that we can look at potentially. And I'm not suggesting that a shift is necessary, but it looks to me like, I don't know, it feels a little bit to me like when we went into this initially and asked like how many parents wanted what, and we ended up with kind of whatever, 55, 45, it's about a 50% mark. Do we know really how many parents would make that shift? That to me is still something that's out there. And I don't know how you ask that without creating an expectation. And if you do that, if that's a negative. So I don't know if that's a question so much as, do we need more information? Do we think that would be helpful? So I think that's kind of my bigger kind of question. Do we think that some of that information is out there and it would be helpful as we move forward in getting a feel for that? I think there's pockets of parents that are feeling probably now that maybe the virtual is not the best for their kid. Maybe they're seeing their kids struggle. What kind of support are we offering them? Which kind of goes back to Danielle's question. How can we make it better for those students if we're going to leave them where they're at when they're really struggling? And I think that's kind of what you were getting at. So maybe if somebody can kind of address that, if there's a way we can make that better.
I think Bobby, I mentioned this earlier and I'm going to go back to this. I think there's always an opportunity to get through any barrier. The question that the community and the board needs to genuinely address, in my opinion, is what threshold of disruption are we willing to accept to get there? And this notion that the students that we are most concerned about are the students, again, you're talking about 6 months of learning loss for many students. You're talking about social emotional connections that aren't being met. And you're talking about all of these pieces to maintain the social distancing that Kathy Ferris, I think I will candidly say, I think she's one of the most expert people with her finger on the pulse that I've ever spoken with about health in general, but upon this issue, very knowledgeable. If maintaining social distance is critical, yet attending to the younger kids is important, then we have to, in my mind, entertain the ability of spreading kids out throughout the district. That is something that makes people very uncomfortable. Also, a decision would need to be made in some way to perhaps gather space from taking secondary students out of the hybrid setting to make space for younger kids within a hybrid setting. So, and anybody on there are administrators on this call who run buildings every day, and obviously Dr. Matthews and so on. So I'm speaking from my perspective. But the sooner we can get those especially younger students with our interventionists, with our ancillary service providers, with our teachers, the better we're all going to feel. Or at least I should say the better I'm going to feel on that, because the learning losses we've seen in the past 6 months from initial assessment is difficult. However, to your point, or maybe it was Danielle's point, we also need to honor, there are many parents that I live in the community. I have the pleasure of speaking with people, and there are many parents that no matter what would like to keep their student virtual. They have no interest, no matter what I may say about teaching and learning, and we need to respect that, would like to keep their kids home. And some of the parents that I've spoken with are very firm about that.
I do think that Dr. Weber is correct that if the decision is made that we need to bring students back, you have to begin to identify how can you do that safely. And if social distance is important, we've been told since March that social distance is important, and the numbers don't suggest that we're out of the woods yet. So if social distance is still important and we want to bring more kids back, then you're going to have to create break down walls, at the middle school or in some of our elementary buildings where that's possible, and have one teacher teaching, 25 kids in a double classroom. So you can spread out the children. But as was mentioned, when you do that, all of a sudden you're not going down to the cafeteria to eat lunch like we're currently doing. You're not able to walk in the hallways, like we're currently doing. You'd have to create some alternative situation. It creates, there's a ripple effect for doing that. We could say that we want to bring all of our K-6 students back. We're going to spread them throughout the district. We're going to use the middle school and high school classrooms for some of this and make 7 through 12 all virtual. But there are parents who are happy with the hybrid experience at 7 through 12, and they don't want their students to go virtual because their students are having a positive experience there. But we don't have room within we don't have the physical space within our elementary buildings to increase class sizes and still maintain social distance. It is just a physical impossibility. We don't have the physical space at the middle or the high school to do that as well. And so at some level, the board has to decide if social distance is not important anymore. We are still in phase 4 of the governor's return to school roadmap. Phase 4 strongly recommends social distance. Phase 5 allows us to have less social distance, but we are not in phase 5. And so as Ms. Ferris mentioned, all of a sudden, and if you have 23 first graders in a classroom, or 23 fourth graders in a classroom, 23 or 27 sixth graders in a classroom, and you have a student or who tests positive, then all of a sudden there's collateral damage around that student because they were not 6 feet apart. Students were sitting all day long within 6 feet of that other student. And as a result, those students are going to get quarantined. And so at some level, we have to make that decision. Now, having said that, we also have to look at how do we make the hybrid experience, how do we make the virtual experience better for the students who have chosen those ways. You know, I see Mr. Kane, I see Ms. Carter. I know that they've been having those conversations with the teachers at their high school. I spoke with a teacher at the high school today, you know, and asked him, you know, where was his class, his hybrid class, compared to last year when they were all in session together in September. And he said two interesting things to me. One is, he said, because I have smaller class sizes in the hybrid experience, I have a better sense of where my students are, because I only have 12 or 15 students each hour as opposed to 27 or 28 students. And so I have a better sense of where they are. Am I providing a good at-home experience for those students right now? He said, I'm not providing as much as I could or should. And so I'm trying to figure out how to make that better. The other interesting thing he said to me is that students enjoy being with each other at the high school. And we know that. And so we have this push and this pull that we're trying to figure out. What we are responsible for is bringing to the board a recommendation on October 15th. And so we will do that. At this point, though, I want our community to be aware that you know, November 6th is a Friday, November 9th is the Monday. I don't anticipate that the recommendation that we would bring to the board right now would be to make significant changes starting November 9th. I would anticipate that we might entertain making some significant changes at the end of first semester. But that's still kind of to be determined because we don't know what flu season is going to do to us in November, December, January.
Dr. Matthews?
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Wait, go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Weber, and then Mrs. Hood.
So a comment that Dr. Matthews just made is important also I think for the community and teachers here. So we're one of two districts in all of Oakland County that are offering two options, a virtual and a face-to-face option. And so think of it this way. It would be like if you were a pilot for Delta Airlines and your CEO said, okay, we want you to do completely, we're going to still transport people, but we need you to do it a completely different way. And we're not going to have any extra people to do it or any extra income to do it, but you're going to have to do it and you're going to have to do it safely. And you've got less than a month to put it together, go. And so when I hear Steve say a teacher is being hard on themselves and saying, gosh, I'm not doing enough on this for the students when they're at an at-home day, we can't forget that our hybrid teachers are teaching all week. So when a group of students are with them on Monday, and then those students are at home on Tuesday, that teacher is teaching in person all day Tuesday as well. And so that's the mix we're trying to find. We're trying to leverage the synergy of 425 teachers. We're trying to leverage the synergy of a fully aligned curriculum, instructional coaches, principals and assistant principals. What can we do to bolster those at-home days? I'm not going to sit here and lie to you as to parents and say that we can give you synchronous learning on the at-home days. We don't have the personnel to do it. What I can say unequivocally is that we can do better with the quality of content that's coming home on the at-home days. And that's something that we're striving for incredibly. So for all of the teachers out there who may be listening to this, please know, we know how hard you're working and parents know how hard you're working. The parents I've spoken to, even the most frustrated parents, never, ever have said one thing about the teachers not working hard. They get it. I think the parents are naturally, and this is where the empathy comes from, are naturally frustrated with seeing their kids struggle and not being able to help them. And President Ruskin, I've said this before, but I think it's important for people to hear this. You know, I've been doing this work for 28 years. I was teacher of the year, principal of the year. And if my own son got one good day of teaching out of me in the spring, he was lucky. This is so hard. And I have one child. Some of you have 6. It is hard. And please know that we know that and that we feel for you as well as parents.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Weber. Mrs. Hood, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. As I was looking at the presentation this afternoon, the first thing I wrote down as I was going through the different options, the first thing I wrote down was cannot eliminate social distancing. And as Kathy Ferris was talking through the contact tracing that we have to go through, that we have already gone through with the few cases that we've had, I just think that disrupting the design, the classes that we have today, it is not worth the potential to introduce. I mean, this isn't a hot potato that when somebody tests positive, it's not like they've been tagged, you're it, and everybody gets contact traced and then everybody sits at home for 2 weeks and goes about their business. This is a deadly disease. And having been through something like this with one of our sons, and Kathy Ferris will recognize this, one of our sons when he was little had RSV before there was a vaccine, and then he had the adenovirus 2 years apart. And he was on that pretty Michigan helicopter that went across, and he was on a ventilator for 3 weeks each time, and he was an ECMO candidate. And this is not something, so I guess I'm speaking as an older parent to our younger parents who have young children. When he got out of the hospital, he had months of occupational and speech therapy just to get him back to where he was. So this is serious business. And to minimize the impact, to minimize the importance of maintaining social distancing, I think is a huge mistake. So I just wanted to add that in. I don't want us to lose track of why we're even having this discussion. That's all. Thank you.
I would like to jump in and follow up Ms. Hood's point. When Oakland County Health came out, when we had the original 5 cases at Novi High School that expanded to 9 cases, we, upon their recommendation, closed down the high school for 2 days. And I had parents reach out to me and said, I thought our social distancing was supposed to protect us against this, from having to close down the school. And what we discovered is that Oakland County Health came in and asked for things and were somewhat surprised that we had them. They asked for seating charts. We gave them. They asked, do you wear masks? And we said we do. They asked if we disinfected all the desks every period. And we said we did. And so because they had not been able to complete their investigation of those 8 students, eventually 9 students, that's why they recommended that we close for 2 days. But what they said to us after that is that based on the evidence that we've seen of what you're doing in your school, we don't think we'll ever have to close down the school again. That because we trust what you're doing, because you're following the guidelines in the return to school plan, we believe that we don't have to close your school again. And when we had the case at one of our elementary schools this week, we were notified on Sunday, we didn't close the school. Why? Because Oakland County Health knew that we had social distancing, we had seating charts, we wore masks at our elementary level, and so that we didn't close the school. And if we change the social distancing expectations that we have, what we're going to find is that closures will become more common.
Dr. Matthews. Mrs. Murphy?
Yeah, so one of Andy's Mr. Coombs' last slides talked about scenarios we couldn't anticipate. And I want to just say that obviously back when we said November 6th was going to be kind of the deadline, obviously there were scenarios we couldn't anticipate then, or challenges. And one of the challenges, it seems to me, is that making a change at this point could really prove disruptive in a lot of ways. And I want to see our kids go back. I don't want to see our parents struggling to juggle things. I don't want to see our kids struggling not to connect socially. So I think that in the middle of this, figuring out ways that we can make the experience, like what are the challenges? How can we make it better until we can make a change? I know we all need to show each other grace right now, teachers, parents, ourselves, as we struggle through this. It's not easy for anyone. I'm inclined to think that I would love to bring our elementary students at least back. I know that half days isn't maybe doable, but that to me would be something fabulous. I don't know if that was considered to bring them back half days every, for 4 days, or if that is even possible and how disruptive that would be. But just having them being able to make those connections, I think we're all feeling, what can we do? And I'm not sure the right answer. I think we did offer a great selection and a great option for our parents. And I would like to think that sticking with it through this would be something that we would all say we can do this together and we'll try and make it better. So I don't know what was considered in terms of our elementary students in terms of maybe half days, and whether or not that's even possible with transportation or not. Or is that just a scenario that throws a whole nother bomb in the scenario?
I can say that back in August, we looked at that potential, and the concerns that we had in August are still the concerns that we have today. That you would bring, for example, an elementary classroom. You have 22 students, and let's just say it's an even split of 11 and 11. So you'd have 11 in the morning, 11 in the afternoon. You'd have to ensure that the classroom, the hallways, the cafeteria, the gym, everything is cleaned completely. Each between the morning and the afternoon session. Our bus drivers would face some significant challenges because they come in and start at between 6 and 6:30 in the morning, and so they would just finish up their morning runs between 9 and 9:30. They would then have to return to pick up students, elementary students, starting at 11:30, and to get them home, and then they would have to pick up the second half and bring them back. And so it would take some adjusting of our schedules as well, to ensure that they each get a full half day. I don't know if that's a better option for parents. They would have to find opportunities for their children 4 days or 5 days a week, half day, as opposed to now they have 2 full days in school. And then they're identifying options for their students the other 3 days. So those are certainly things that we can examine, but we did examine that option back in August.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy.
Wave, Danielle.
Hi. Mrs. Roney has her hand up. I think she was getting ready, but she's on mute.
Okay, here I go. I understand it's hard, but I don't think, and I could be totally wrong, but I don't think our parents, when they agreed to going all virtual or hybrid, thought this was going to be for an entire year. I know it's really hard to move things around. I understand that. I get it, but we're Novi, you know, and I just feel that there are some, like Bobby said, there are some students struggling extremely with either hybrid or with virtual. And we would be remiss as a school district not to figure out how we can help those families, okay? Secondly, we have districts all around us going back to, 4-day learning. And why can't we, and I see all the paperwork and all the facts and stuff. Why can't we figure that out? I get it, but it's best for the kids to be in school. And I appreciate all the teachers. I know this is rough. Any type of change will affect them, their families. I get it. But talking to parents on the street, they want their kids back in school. And if it's 4 days a week, that's not what they want. They want 5, but they're willing to do some compromise. And yes, I know there's parents out there that want nothing to do with the school. And I get social distancing, but where do we compromise on the kids that their mental health, their parents' mental health, that they're struggling so bad? So that's just how I feel. I don't think that, as a board, we ask for, should we have a survey? It's been 6 weeks now. We need something, to see one way or the other. And I get it. I'm not administration. I know there's a ton of stuff that goes into this, and it's going to be very difficult, but we're Novi. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Marianne. Mr. Mena?
Yeah, a couple comments. So I have been fielding a number of concerns from parents stating that their child's current educational method is less than ideal. And as Dr. Weber stated, we know. So with that, I'm glad to hear that we're going to be sending out a survey shortly to help deep dive on some of these concerns. I do like some of the questions that some folks were throwing out tonight, but I simply ask that the board get a chance to review the entire survey before it goes out. I just really want to make sure that some of the things that we need in our decision-making process will be asked on that survey. The other comment I was going to make was, and maybe rhetorical right now, but probably won't be soon. But the elephant in the room is this: when? When will we feel comfortable and safe enough to bring everyone back full-time? Or maybe just some full-time, or maybe just hybrid students, or maybe just certain grades? Exactly what sign or metric are we waiting for in order for our students to start coming back full-time? What is that sweet spot? How much risk should we consider acceptable? At what point does the damage from being out of class outweigh the risks of COVID? Frankly, I don't think we'll have before us anytime soon an option that does not include some risk. So the question is, what is the difference between waiting tomorrow or November 6th or December or January in that respect? And I think that's something that we need to consider, because frankly, again, I don't see anytime soon risk being off the table. And I really do think that at some point this board is going to have to make a decision, a tough decision, with the understanding that there will be some risk involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mena. Mr. Smith?
Thanks, Danielle. I'd like to ask this as a question to Dr. Matthews, Nurse Ferris, anybody else that has a educated opinion. I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room, nor on the call, But fortunately or unfortunately, I will have to make a vote, whether it's in 2 weeks or at some future date, about what to do. As you all know, I was the board member who advocated for in-person all day when we decided to go down this path in the first place. I guess to pick up on where Willie left off, what I haven't heard, and I guess Kathy, I'd like to know your opinion on, is at least the data that I've seen is the risk of our kids really being seriously harmed seems to be extremely low. I don't know if that's fake news or if a 99.999% survival rate is true. I honestly don't know that. I listened to Trustee Hood share her story about her son, and it breaks my heart as a father of 3. But as a father of a 14-year-old freshman who asked me the other day, why do I have to go to school on Tuesdays and Fridays? It's supposed to be in person, but I walk into my class and the teachers tell us all to open up our Chromebooks and go to Schoology and then do the lesson for the day. And then the teacher sits at their desk and the kids sit at their desks. And that's not in-person learning, so I appreciate Dr. Weber's comments about recognizing that it's not ideal. But I guess to Willie's point, if the survival rate from COVID, and I honestly don't mean to sound like a Martian, but are we at a point where we need to look at each other and say, just because you test positive for COVID-19, is that really a death sentence for our kids? I've heard us all say over and over and over and over again that our fundamental concern should be the safety of our children. I've heard us all say over and over and over again that the best way to educate our kids socially and mentally and scholastically is to have them in school learning face to face, but yet we're not doing that, or we don't seem to be willing to do that. And to Marianne's point, other districts are saying, maybe social distancing is something that we can cut from 6 feet to 3 feet, or I don't know what the numbers are. But I'm asking you guys as experts, Steve, you've got to hear from these other principals that are making the decisions to go back, or the other superintendents, I should say. Are they just throwing caution to the wind, or have they determined that based on medical data and science that really if you're under the age of 50 or 60, the likelihood of being seriously harmed by contracting COVID is going to negatively impact you or your family? I get that there's teachers and families that have family members at home that might have other complications. But then, they could elect to, to teach or to learn virtually. I just really am seeking to understand from those of you that are in the field, are we getting to a point where the risk level of contracting COVID is acceptable, or am I hearing that, no, the problem is if you test positive for COVID, then everyone's quarantined for 14 days, and then that throws everything off kilter in the first place. So if you can just maybe somebody help me understand this a little bit better so that I can make a better decision in the future, I would appreciate that.
I'll let Ms. Ferris start the conversation.
So in terms of, because I still work at the hospital, you all know that. In terms of pediatric cases, we have not seen barely any in my practice. But I think our total was 7 since March. Now, when I speak with Oakland County, because this is a constant conversation I'm having with Oakland County, why are we not seeing the numbers change if we're not seeing the increase in pediatric patients? There's not enough data with our kids being in school for such a short time to know the impact when the kids are affected to what they're bringing home to their elderly parents, their elderly grandparents, and that's the concern. There's other districts around us that are going into this full force. They are having some troubles. They're having lots of positive cases. I was just in a meeting today with I'm the region leader for Oakland County, all nurses, and we had a meeting today. and it's not being ultra successful in some districts where they've opened their doors just wide open. The concern is not for the general pediatric patient at this point. It's what the ramifications of those kids getting it and transferring it to their family members and whoever may else be affected. So I want Dr. Matthews to share with the number with you that he shared with us yesterday. So when you go to Oakland County Gov site, it shares with you the number of positive cases per zip code. So it goes by 48374, it goes by 48375, it goes by 48377. It gives you the total number, but it also breaks it down by school district. Now, when it breaks it down by school district, it's not just the kids in our districts, it's all of the people living in our district and how many is affected. And unfortunately, that number is pretty high. So I'm going to let Dr. Matthews kind of tell you what that number was and what it was in March, because he explained it to me yesterday again, and I'm constantly looking at it. But Oakland County is looking at that number. And if it's not going down, then they're not willing to budge on any of their recommendations for opening schools either.
So as I have been tracking these numbers, as Ms. Ferris indicated, I track them by zip code, daily cases per 10,000 residents. In August 9th, when I first started tracking the numbers, we had in 48374, we had 10.9 cases per 10,000 residents, and 48375, we had 18.9, and then 48377, we had 15.4. As of today, October 1st, we had 19.9 cases per 10,000 in 48374, 19.3 in 48375, and 22.1 cases per 10,000 residents in 48377. Oakland County Health, back when I started looking at cases by school district, we had 4.3 cases in the school district boundaries, not in the school, but in the school district boundaries, in the period between August 6th and August 19th. The latest data that Oakland County Health has put out, the September 10th through the September 23rd, it was 15.2 cases in the school district. So that number has gone up. And so, the numbers haven't changed significantly since we made our decision in August. And so, part of the dilemma, the struggle that we're having is trying to figure out when and if we should change our model. I agree with Mr. Mena. I agree with what many of you have said this evening, that at some point we're going to have to make a decision to come back. And what I would suggest, and what the recommendation more than likely will be in August or in 2 weeks, is that we examine. I just don't think we can make the change November 9th. The factors are too many and varied. A student's had teacher A for 1/4 of U.S. history. Changing their schedule, they're going to have teacher B for the 2nd quarter. Is that good for the student? Is that good for their grade? In addition, how many hybrid parents are going to say, I don't want to be hybrid anymore, I want to go all virtual, because they are comfortable in the hybrid situation because we have 15 kids per classroom as opposed to 25 to 30 at the middle and high school, and between 20 and 23 at the elementary school. At some point we do have to make a decision to go back. I've asked many of the superintendents in Oakland County what they're doing. Most of them are not coming back full time. Most of them are doing some sort of hybrid blend in the next few weeks to get their students back. And we brought our students back in a hybrid format in September. It hasn't even been a month since we've been in school. We've been in school. We started September 8th, and today is October 1st. And so, but it hasn't even been a month since we've been in school. And I think that we continue with the approach that we've had until the end of first semester. And potentially we give parents an option in December to make a new commitment, with the understanding that the new commitment they can't change, because that's how we determine staffing. That's how we create our schedule. And as has been shown tonight in the presentation, if even 25 students at the middle school were to change from virtual to hybrid, it affects minimally 85 different students and impacts them in fairly significant ways. So this is a struggle. And Mr. Smith's point is well made, that what is a safe kind of threshold to bring students back? The ages 5 through 18 are not impacted at a high rate. When they are impacted, it tends not to be severe. But just today, it was reported that a teacher's aide in a district up north, they were in school. All the students were in school, and all of a sudden they went from 0 cases in their district to over 35 cases in their district, and a teacher's aide passed away because of COVID. That makes me uncomfortable to think that we would put staff and students at risk in those kinds of situations. But having said that, I know that we have to find a way to get our students back to school, seeing our teachers on a more regular face-to-face basis. So October 15th is when we'll bring a recommendation to the board. That's required by law. And so we will do that. We just wanted to bring this presentation to the board this evening to give you some perspective about some of the issues that we're facing, and continue to reach out to our community to try to get some feedback from them, both our students and our parents, as to how things are going. I know that this has been a fairly long conversation, but it's an important conversation for us to have.
Steve? Dr. Matthews?
Looks like Dr. Ruskin said, go ahead, RJ.
So to Trustee Smith's comment about students coming into class and flipping in laptops is a perfect example of when we try to have everything, what occurs. So there are 47 teachers at Novi High School who teach what we call combo classes, which means they teach students who are virtual and hybrid at the same time. Why is this? Because we offered every single choice and option to our community, period, without hiring one additional teacher. So the fact is that we have teachers who are caught in this piece of wanting to provide the best possible education that they can for students who are at home 5 days a week, or students in the high school 2 days a week. Running a high school schedule is such, as a former high school principal myself, if we did take out certain electives, so to speak, so we didn't have 47 teachers teaching these combo classes, would have then resulted in other classes that were disproportionately high, to the tune of class sizes of 50, 60, 70, 80 kids. So just so parents know in the community, and I appreciate you bringing this up, Trustee Smith, that the impression could be, gosh, what's going on here? Well, that's what's going on here. So 47 teachers at the high school teaching a class that's both, because it's the only class that's offered in that way, so we can make sure that we offer the community choice. And that's where I think the frustration is. And I want to go back to the comment that I made earlier. Anything, any barrier, pretty much, is solvable. The issue is, what price are we willing to pay? And that price comes to, is it student health? Is it the fact that, okay, students don't seem to get COVID? Ms. Ferris said 7 students. But to Dr. Matthews' point, the people who teach students are adults. And those adults have their own kids that they go back to, and that I'm sure their own kids would like to see healthy. We could do things like bring back all K-4 again, But that may very well mean us saying we're going to go completely virtual at the high school level so we can have the room to do from a social distance standpoint. So a school board that is paid extraordinary amounts of money to do your job, I know you are, I'm kidding, you're not, who does these things out of the goodness of their own heart, I would also hope that the community understands to have some grace with our school board members, that we're throwing all these scenarios at people who will have that vote on their conscience. And so when you're working with school board members, I would, in the community, I would implore you to please respect the fact that the school board members are also in a very, very difficult position. They're the ones that ultimately have to vote on that. So Tom, thanks for bringing that up. It gave me an opportunity to speak to why that's happening with Tom Jr. and other students. And if we think about our teachers in that situation, if you talk to any teacher in that situation, to say that it's less than ideal would be, I think, too light a term. It rips our staff up to not be able to give everything they want to our kids. So thanks for bringing that up, Tom.
Thank you, RJ. So we are going to move on in a minute. I just want to say one more thing and then we will move on. I just want to caution everybody from comparing ourselves to other districts. So as Mrs. Roney pointed out, we are Novi. That doesn't mean we're superheroes beyond superhero status, but when you're comparing to other districts, you know, you have really, unless you have the facts in front of us, we don't know if they're talking about their students are going back full-time K through 6. I mean, there are some districts bringing back kindergarten and first grade on October 12th, and that is all. And then they're discussing 2 weeks later. There's no even conversation on the table about middle school or high school. So I think that we need to keep in perspective that we in Novi were one of 2 districts who brought our kids back. We came up with a plan. We're working through the plan. Is there things that need to change and happen and improve and celebrate? I think that there is. But don't get caught up in the what is everyone else doing, because we're not comparing apples to apples. It's apples to grapefruit. They are swimming upstream trying to figure out how to produce a plan that took our staff and our administration almost 4 weeks to do in 2 days. I mean, I have friends who teach in other districts and they were given 2 days to go from virtual to teaching. Some chose virtual, some chose hybrid, and to plan how they were going to do it and to make that happen. And although it's happening, it's not happening like we all think it is. It's not like one day the bus is going to come by and pick up all 28 students that are going to go into that first grade classroom. Some are doing half days, some are doing full days, some are doing, you know, K4, some are making all their virtual students go for the whole year. Many districts made their parents make a decision from the day that school started until June 12th. And they didn't even have a plan that they were voting on. They just knew that when the plan came up, that they had chosen virtual and they were stuck with that. And they're stuck with that for the whole year. Or they had to choose a hybrid plan that they never even knew anything about and wasn't even going to happen until Thanksgiving. And they're stuck with that until June 12th. So I just caution you from comparing and saying, this one's doing this, why can't we do that? We're Novi, like Mrs. Roney pointed out, and we're going to try and do what's best for our students and our staff and our whole school community with what we have to work with. So that being said, I am going to move on to comments from the audience related to agenda items. And there are quite a few. Unfortunately, you know, I know that some people would like to be done at a certain time, but as we know in other districts, sometimes this will go on for a long time, and it's so important to hear what our public has to say. So comments from the audience related to agenda items can only be related to agenda items. Board cannot comment on any comments directed at us. Because we are virtual, Dr. Matthews will be reading those Google comments that have come in through the Google document. I would say, because we do have 53 comments, that we will limit the comments to 2 minutes. I'm assuming that most of them fall in that line, but Mr. Mena, if you do not mind using your time watch, and I hate to have you be the referee, but if there's a comment that's going beyond that time, just out of the sake of time and to make sure that everybody's comments are able to be read, if you can just kind of give a wave or let Dr. Matthews know, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. I will read as fast as I can. The first comment is from Michael Jasinski. While I understand that the middle school and high school cannot have a full weekly schedule of face-to-face classes, given the fact that they are in one facility each, here's a rationale for having elementary students who are hybrid learners return full-time to their respective schools. Given that a large number of parents have opted for their children to remain fully remote learners, having all the elementary schools reopen means that students who attend in person will still continue to be around fewer students, in addition to taking the usual protective precautions across multiple buildings. Elementary years are crucial for special needs students who benefit developmentally much more through a full-time in-person program than from just 2 days per week in person. Parents with 2 or more children enrolled in an elementary school for hybrid learning have a very difficult time facilitating simultaneous Zoom meetings for their children in different grades 2 to 3 days per week. And in 2-income or 1-parent households, having 2 or more children enrolled in an elementary school in different grades on simultaneous Zoom calls results in an overall ineffective experience and at times chaotic learning experience for those students. Next comment is from Julie Song. I chose virtual learning and I'm extremely happy. My daughter is at Meadows in 6th grade. She has 5 classes each day, special, social studies, science, ELA, and math, with breaks in between to read, play outside, or catch up with friends. Her teachers have been amazing. They are caring, positive, energetic, and engaging. Kudos to them for being able to convey all of that through a screen. They conduct whole group and small group discussions, provide group and individual activities and assignments, and we even have our own science experiment growing in our windowsill. The kids are doing great with it. They are polite, active, organized, and very tech savvy. Thank you for offering such a robust virtual option for those of us who are not ready or able to send our kids back to school. Lisa Seal. Question 1. There are schools in Oakland County that have returned to full-time in-person with a virtual option for high-risk families. Oxford is one of them. Their COVID-19 case count is 11.7 per 10,000, which is 0.011% in their school district. Novi has a case count of 15.2 per 10,000, which is 0.015%. What is the case count that you, the board, have determined that we need to be under for it to be safe to return to school? Question 2. Since the initial survey went out in late August, many things have become more clear. First, the hybrid option for school is not what it was described to be, 3 days with no instruction for high school. Second, the COVID cases and severity of the cases have gone down significantly. With this new knowledge, most parents and students would choose different option than what they chose originally. Dr. Matthews stated in an email to me that families and staff are in a routine. How do we know this? I haven't been asked, nor have my students. I can emphatically tell you that we are not in a routine. The hybrid model does nothing but create chaos and a lack of any kind of structure and schedule. Not to mention they are not learning nearly at the pace they should be, nor do they have the teacher support they need. I'm asking that a new survey be sent out to families so that you know what your community desires for their students. I feel the following questions should be included in the survey. Is the current model you chose working for your children? If you could, would you return your children to school full time? If you could, would you change from the current model to the other? Are you concerned about the mental health of your child due to the stress and anxiety caused by a lack of structure, a lack of social experiences, and the lack of being able to have time with teachers? Question 3, with the latest executive order allowing increased indoor capacity, you effectively could combine 2 hybrid groups and allow them to go to school 4 to 5 days a week together and still be within the EO's guidelines. Is this being considered? Comment 4, Bryn Lubin. Hi, I'm a junior at Novi High School and I wanted to share my opinion of the hybrid option we have at our school. The virtual days are not easy. The communication with teachers is hard. It can take days for my teachers to respond to my emails. Some of the instructions are not clear and makes it very hard to follow on what's going on in class. Novi schools should try to make all kids in person as soon as possible. The social aspect of virtual isn't there. I can't interact with my teachers like I usually do because I barely know them. I have seen them a total of 7 times and it's the 4th week of school. I hope you will consider making a change in the schedule for kids like me who need it. Comment 5. Kurt Ridzik. My children are currently enrolled in hybrid learning. So far, it feels like a failure. They are bright kids, but the current situation I fear will have a terrible long-term effect. They thrive and need face-to-face interaction with their teachers. Comment 6, Matt Thibodeau. I believe the 5-day in-person option should be offered at the earliest opportunity, especially for elementary students. Comment 7, Tracy Rich Creek. My daughter is a hybrid, and on her virtual days, which have been 3 days a week for the last 2 weeks because of the PSAT, she spends about 15 to 20 minutes on schoolwork class max. If she was full-time virtual, I believe they are either getting teacher instruction and assignments for the full 50 minutes. She wakes up at 10 or 11 and is done with school in 3 hours. We must have misunderstood what hybrid meant because we were under the impression that on the virtual days, they would be on Zoom all day from 7:15 to 2, but in the same class as the in-person students. The teacher would teach one lesson to both sets of students at the same time. If this style of virtual continues, will all teachers be required to assign more work so that the students are learning as much as everyone else? Otherwise, will we have an option to switch to virtual second semester? Thanks. Comment 8, Marina Martininko. Hello, NCSD Board of Education members. When you decided to close our schools in March, we appreciated the caution on behalf of our community. However, the current plan to reopen our schools is leaving our children behind. I'm speaking from experience. I have 2 children on a hybrid schedule. My middle school child is not getting a top-notch Novi public school education. However, she is managing to stay on task throughout the day. My second grader is struggling 3 out of 5 days every week, with Wednesdays being the worst by far. On the days he is supposed to work on seesaw activities by himself, he will not do anything unless I guide him. And then he is done with his work in under 30 minutes. For the rest of Mondays and Thursdays, he is not getting any kind of education. Every Wednesday is plagued by endless computer glitches, such as Zoom having an imperfect session control and randomly preventing us from joining, screen share not working for the teacher, videos playing too quietly, Scholastic News asking for login and password, and we were only provided the password, kids not muting themselves, etc. All of the above actually happened in the course of the first 2 hours today. My son will only join if I sit next to him, and with many parents having full-time jobs, you are placing the double burden on working moms and dads. The choice you are presenting to parents with kids in elementary school is sacrifice your child's education or let your work performance slip and risk losing your job. Every week by lunchtime, my son is so tired and would not return to the screen. I've seen other kids dozing off as well. How many hours is it reasonable to expect a second grader to focus by themselves? I've heard you say that it will be hard to make changes in the middle of a semester or school year. I assure you it is not as hard as maintaining the current schedule is for working parents, and it will be worth it for the kids' education. Having a plan, however difficult it may be, is part of your job. If we can't return everyone back to school at the same time, let's focus on returning elementary school children first. With half the parents opting for virtual, surely there is something we can do. Governor Whitmer left the decision up to each school district, so please use your power and give the parents a choice, which includes 100% in-person return. Parents deserve a choice. Kids deserve a real education. Teachers tell us they want kids back at school. Our numbers are acceptable for face-to-face return. So please don't make a wrong choice out of convenience. Get our children back into the classroom full-time where they belong. Comment 9 from Jenny Lubin. Hi, I appreciate all the time and effort that has gone into making our kids and schools safe. It is my opinion that it is safe for kids to go back to school, go back on a regular basis. I know the numbers of positive cases of COVID numbers are up, but the CDC's latest update on COVID-19 has me perplexed as to why this has not taken place yet. According to the CDC, cases in people ages 5 to 24, there is a 0.00004% death rate. Cases in people between ages 24 to 64, there is a 0.002 death rate. The survival rate of COVID-19 for school-age children is 99.9% and beyond school-age children is 99.8%. Why hasn't this been taken into consideration? These are facts. Kids need the opportunity to be in school full-time. This is how education was designed. This is how many children learn best. Give kids the chance to reach their potential in all areas, social, emotional, and academic. All these areas develop in school with teachers, friends, and administrators. Without consistent actual teaching taking place, our kids are missing out academically. Without social interaction with peers, teachers, and administrators, life skills, emotional and social development are not being fulfilled. Our schools have enough protocols in place to make it a safe place. Give them the opportunity. Virtual cannot do this. 2 days a week with remote experiences cannot do this. Please help kids get the opportunity to get a full experience in school. I believe this is essential to the overall development in life. Comment 10 from Bryce Lubin. I just wanted to say that I believe that 2 days in, 3 days out is very hard to keep organized. I feel like the teachers are just as confused as the kids, so when we ask them questions, they truly don't know how to respond. It's much harder to study as we don't know exactly what we're supposed to be focusing on because we don't have enough teacher time. I also really miss having my friends in school with me because this was a huge reason I liked school. Since only half of us go to school, I can't get those normal interactions. Finally, I just want to make clear that I know me and a lot of my friends would all prefer to go to school full time. The instruction would be much more clear, learning would be easier, and friendly interaction would make the experience even better. Comment 11, Michelle King. My request is to urge the board to reevaluate parents' and students' needs by a survey as soon as possible. Many things have changed since the initial survey. Data on COVID is more clear as to the risk for students and staff. Our governor has changed Michigan state regulations, which would make it easier to increase the number of students in a classroom. And parents are more clear on how our current system is working for their students' mental health and academic progress. My second question is asking the board if there would be a chance to now combine the two hybrid groups to allow those that chose hybrid to return to school more days a week. This seems it would not increase risk and could now easily be accomplished with new guidelines given by the governor. My last question is asking the board, administration, and staff to quickly change the current hybrid learning choice to be what it was originally described to parents. It was not described as 2 days of in-person and 3 days of little to no structure. Parents were told students would, at a minimum, receive at least 1 day of structured virtual learning. We're now a month into the new semester. As to date, the high school students have received 1/2 day of structured virtual learning. This is not acceptable and not at all how hybrid choice was described. More structure needs to be given quickly. We were promised that the same mistakes which happened in the spring would not happen again, and yet we are seeing no improvement. This needs to be evaluated and improved immediately for the mental and academic well-being of our students. Comment 12, Aaron Seal. The CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the National Association of School Nurses, and the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine all support in-person learning for schools who are in the lower 2 risk thresholds outlined by the CDC. The reason they support this is due to the higher risk of adverse learning capability, mental health concerns, reliable nutrition, opportunities for physical activity, technology challenges, etc. They state clearly that schools need to be flexible and nimble in their constantly changing environment. Novi School District is currently under the lower risk threshold as outlined by the CDC. Why is Novi not pushing to have children return to school when every respected agency recommends that they do? Comment 13, Leah Chaco. Please send them back to school. They need to go to school and be educated. Online learning is not optimal, and we are struggling. Comment 14, Chris King. In the presentation provided by Dr. Matthews, he mentions that having larger class sizes eliminates compliance with social distancing. Per the CDC, social distancing is necessary where masks cannot be worn. With all the students, teachers, and staff wearing masks, the need for social distancing in school is eliminated. Support can be found, and he provides a website. With this knowledge, why would we not give the students the option to return to school full time? Comment 15, Deborah Lynch. Please allow our children to go back to school full time. Data no longer supports that in-person days should be limited. Our children need to be in school and learning full time. Comment 16, Heidi Burns. I ask you to please follow the data and what our experts are learning daily about this virus. Emotion and desire should not outweigh science, data, and facts. Thank you for advocating on behalf of our kids and our families. Comment 17, Aaron Patrick. Regarding the high school, the hybrid students are not getting an equal education. Sorry for my misunderstanding that they would be independently learning 2 days per week and most Wednesdays to date. Other school districts are live streaming classes to virtual students and to hybrid students together on their at-home days. Why is this not possible for Novi? Then there could be more fluidity and equality for the virtual and hybrid students. I expected more from Novi than we are getting. We should also start looking at data and determining if there can be more in-person days. Comment 18, Janelle Littleton. Our children need to be back in school. It is having negative effects on their mental health, physical health, and their ability to learn. Comment 19, Lisa Bombick. You guys are doing and have done an amazing job for years, and I don't think you presume to know more than the people of science when it comes to increasing numbers at school and sporting events. But I'm more concerned with you feeling pressure from the school community to do so. As we teach our children not to succumb to peer pressure, please continue doing what's best for kids, not for a handful of parents. Comment 20, Angie Shires. With gratitude and appreciation to all the staff and teachers, I make the following suggestions to enhance the experience for our hybrid students. Most of my feedback is related to the high school hybrid experience. K-8 seems to have a much more consistent communication, schedule, and synchronized learning. At the high school level, I have yet to see the value of being in person for both mental health and in-person instruction, which was the promise of hybrid. With a few enhancements, I think we can really improve the hybrid situation. For hybrid students, Wednesday needs to be synchronized learning. Currently, 2 Wednesdays have been canceled for SAT, PSAT. Wednesdays need to be protected as a consistent teaching opportunity for teachers to teach via Zoom with a set time schedule. Because both virtual and hybrid are staffed by Novi teachers, there should be consistency in how assessments are administered as a department. I am very concerned that a hybrid student has to take their assessment in person on one of their synchronized learning days. Again, in-person days were implemented so teachers could teach new material. I am very worried about the mental health of hybrid students. With only physically being in school 2 days per week, there is a high probability that multiple assessment tests will stack up on days. Are we creating mini midterm stressful testing days instead of in-person instruction? Comment 21, Sharon Bodine. We need more than 2 days in school. Let the families who want virtual learning keep that option, but let's get the other kids back in person every day. MHSAA and Governor Whitmer are allowing up to 500 spectators to watch indoor swimming events if the venue holds 2,500 people or more. If 500 people can sit inside a humid pool area, then kids can be back in school. Brighton is open 4 days a week for students. We can do better than 2 hybrid days and our kids need it. The data does not support this extreme reaction. There's no substitute for in-person learning. Comment 22, Shanita Lacey. I feel that parents were lied to about hybrid. I was under the impression that students would be taught 3 days a week virtually. When did independent busy work replace instruction? I'm very disappointed, to say the least. Comment 23, Katie Constantine. I have a 5th grader at Meadows and a 3rd grader at Deerfield, and I want to give a shout out to the teachers for all their hard work. I know the times are tough and planning lessons for all virtual and hybrid cannot be an easy task, but they are all doing a fantastic job. The staff and teachers, my kids, and I have been lucky to know the last several years are the kindest, most loving people, and through their wonderful hearts, our children learn. We are truly blessed each and every day to have the teaching staff we do in this community. Teachers, you've got this. We believe in you, and thank you so much for everything you have done and continue to do. Comment 24, Mike Lubin. Hi, I would like to express my concern and dismay regarding how the semester has gone. The hybrid option, as indicated on the August 10th email, was a virtual instructional experience. I and many Novi parents took this to mean instruction would occur like normal, but only online. That isn't occurring. The whole experience has been disjointed and frustrating. Both of my kids told me if they were given the choice, knowing what they know now, they'd have chosen virtual. Another Novi student told me the same. I recently sent out an admittedly unscientific survey via Facebook. I received 49 answers. 45 were from parents of hybrid kids and 4 who attended virtually. I can share the results with you, but clearly the hybrid folks are not happy. I would have thought by now you'd have sent out your own survey. I think part, maybe all, of the problem is that communication from the district. Since this thing has started, we received nothing from you in the way of, hey, how's it going? Here's what we think. Hey, we know we need to work on some things, etc., with specifics. You really should be meeting with people to see how it's going. The hybrid option is not going well and you need to improve it. If you want details on how we think you should do this, we'd be happy to meet. You need to engage though. Other districts are handling this better. You are now planning to disregard your stated intention to relook at this on November 6th, not without some serious pushback. You cannot continue doing this and expect us to just sit there and take it. If you will not entertain bringing the kids back full time, then you need to change what you are doing. And unlike the governor's science and data, you need to provide some actual numbers. And Novi-centric numbers won't cut it because Catholic Central is located in Novi, and they are handling this just fine. If you will not bring them back, then you need to explain why, and it can't have anything to do with logistics because that indicates your plan was bad to begin with, and having a bad plan impact our kids because you won't fix it isn't acceptable. My personal preference is full-time in person like other districts, Oxford, Grand Haven, the entire state of Florida. I know a guy in Tampa, things are fine there, he says, and many others are doing. If you can't social distance, that's fine. That's what the masks are for. You can't shut things down at the first sign of trouble either. Other districts aren't doing that, and neither are the private schools. COVID is serious, no doubt, but it's largely a non-issue for high school age kids. If the governor's directives are in the way and something you disagree with, then say something. If there are teachers that don't want to come back, then handle it the same way you handle an illness and replace them. I don't know.
Dr. Matthews, time.
You were elected to do this, so fix it. Comment 25 from Sharon Trumpy. Hello, Board of Education and Administration. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Matthews to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion needs in our district. Dr. Matthews, I want you to know I deeply appreciated that you listened to me with a clear goal of understanding and making improvements, not a defending or dismissing. I want you to know that one of the reasons this was possible is because you have proven yourself to be willing to listen through your parent-to-parent book club, through read alouds during the shutdown, through your welcome back to school speech, and so much more. I'm grateful that our district has a leader that understands how valuable these community connections can be. I left our meeting hopeful that with hard work, we can make NCSD a safe and welcoming environment for all students and families. I also want to acknowledge and express appreciation to our excellent educators and all the people behind the scenes making this year a success. From keeping our schools safe and clean to feeding our children, there are so many people to be grateful for in NCSD. Today, Panita Danny Thurman provided the board and administration with an appeal detailing why diversity in hiring should be a priority in NCSD and how that might be accomplished. I strongly support her proposal and hope that NCSD will take advantage of her expertise. In one of your recent meetings, Dr. Kinzer described the hiring process and explained why he believes the process is free of bias. Here's what I want you to think about. I'm an early childhood educator. I received training in how to teach a child to read. If I use this method and over the children in my class were not learning to read, it would not be reasonable for me to say there's no problem with my process. This is how to teach children to read. The results would show me that it was not working, and I need to evaluate what needed to change. Similarly, you have a hiring process that you believe to be free of bias. But year after year, this process results in hiring nearly all white staff. Despite your belief in your process, the results show it is not working. If you truly value the diversity of our student body and believe the research that shows that you're having teachers of color benefit, and you believe the research that shows that having teachers of color benefits students, please evaluate what needs to change. I'd also like to point out that this does not mean that the district is trying to be biased in hiring. I'm not suggesting that anyone is interviewing candidate A and candidate B and then saying, hey, let's hire a candidate A because she's white. Bias is sneaky. More often it looks like this. Candidate A went to the same college as you did. You can chat about dorms, etc. And Ms. Holly let me know time is up. All of these comments will be provided to the board.
Thank you.
Comment 26, Christina Mazara Niehaus. I am concerned that the board is contemplating not allowing changes between virtual and hybrid as previously promised. The only reason I chose a virtual option was because we were told we could reevaluate and make a change in November. This was an important factor in our decision. It is concerning also that one of the points in the meeting packet is possibly having all hybrid students attend 4 days a week. This would mean half the students get to essentially go back to somewhat normal schedule while leaving the other half of students stuck at home for potentially the entire school year. I hope the board considers honoring what was previously represented to parents. Comment 27. Jennifer Pleat. Thank you, Board of Education and Administration, for all your time and effort making this school year a success. My children are attending elementary, middle, and high school virtually. As much as we would like to be back to normal 5 days a week face-to-face, the 5 days a week virtual has been amazing. The teachers have all done a wonderful job making connections with students. My kids love the structure of having a normal full school day and also being able to interact with each teacher every day. There was no disruption when everyone had to be virtual for 2 days, and even the hiccup with Schoology proved to be a non-issue. We are so grateful for our wonderful Novi teachers. Thank you for keeping our kids safe and continuing to provide the excellent Novi education, even when it's through a computer. Christine LaPinta. Upon reading over the agenda for tonight's meeting, it seems as though parents are no longer going to be given a choice to change their learning path on November 6th. If this is the case, it is truly disheartening and upsetting. My family decided to begin the year on the virtual path, knowing that we could change paths with the consideration that the circumstances of the virus could change drastically within a few months, as well as the uncertainty of how my children would perform in the virtual environment. Although the teachers have done an amazing job, virtual learning has proven to be very difficult and very hard to navigate as a family. It had been my intention to switch to the hybrid model on November 6th. However, now it looks as though that will not happen. The community was given a choice, and I made my choice knowing I would be able to change paths. I'm concerned about my children's education and their well-being, as our current situation is just not working. I'm asking that the school board uphold their word and allow families of NCSD the choice to change their learning paths that they were promised at the beginning of the school year. 29. Kelly Janik. What is the plan come November 9th at the end of this semester? What is the plan come November 9th at the end of the semester? Does Novi have a plan to bring the kids back full time? Comment 30. Denise Cummings. In face-to-face full classrooms, a positive case will result in a lot of quarantine students. A 2-week quarantine is not easy. Please use data and science when making your decision. Thank you so much for all you do. Comment 31. Amy Krupkin. After reading over the plan, I feel you should keep the current schedules and change its semester to offer the least amount of disruption. When originally choosing to pick virtual for my children, I did this with the knowledge that they would have the same teacher all year long. If you offer this amount of choice, it says in the document that all teachers could be affected, and now my children lose their teachers that they've now gotten to know and have a relationship with. This should have all been thought out at the beginning of the year. However, that point is now moot. It would be a disservice to the teachers and students to try to replan all of this work that they've already put into the work that they have done getting to know each other. Setting student expectations and norms. These students are already dealing with so much, the lack of consistency could be quite a big hurdle to overcome. Those people who have chosen virtual chose this for the reason of having consistency in their child's learning. We knew that schools could possibly have to close due to COVID, and their going back and forth would be a problem. As a teacher in another district, I cannot imagine having to start all over, learning new students and possibly new curriculum with having to be switching. Haven't you asked enough of your teachers? Thank you for your time. Comment 32. Heather Nyko. These children need to be back in school face-to-face 5 days a week. My 2 children are in 1st and 3rd grade. Virtual learning does not benefit them in any way. Overall, this is detrimental in every aspect. For children and working parents, please consider and reevaluate. Comment 33. Jennifer Page. My husband and I support increasing Novi's K-4 elementary hybrid schedule to 4 days a week. Our daughter loves being in school. Comment 34. Crystal Altz. I am in support of going back to school 4 days a week at the elementary level. As a parent of a kindergartner and a 2nd grader, I feel in-person schooling is the best way for my children to learn. As long as masks are worn and efforts are made to keep air circulating from the outside, as this has been found to reduce the amount of virus particles in the air, I will continue to support a decision to attend schools 4 days a week. Thank you for your time and for all that you do for our students here in Novi. Comment 35. Kelly Petz. I support sending the hybrid elementary students back to school 4 days a week as soon as possible. I appreciate everything that the teachers are doing, but I don't think anything can replace in-person instruction. Comment 36. Joanna Bolduc. I think we should have school 4 days because it's more stability and structure for kids and teachers. Comment 37, Nicole Azuz. Huge thanks to all the teachers, administrators, and board members who are working tirelessly to make this school year safe and successful. You're doing an awesome job. I'm writing to express the fact that I do not support a change to the hybrid schedule unless class sizes can be kept low and 6 feet of distance between desks can be maintained. If this is not possible, but the 4-day return is still decided upon, please consider implementing it at a time when you give families the option to switch, even if that is not until the end of first semester. Also, please give heavy consideration to what the teachers think is the best at this point, more in-person instruction or less disruption to the current process. Finally, if 6 feet between desks absolutely cannot be maintained, would the district consider purchasing plexiglass shields for all desks as they have done in Northville? Comment 38, Mike Petta. Thank you very much for initially approving some in-person learning for our children. With that being said, the virtual in-home learning days have become increasingly difficult for a family, first and third grade kids. These at-home days require full side-by-side parental involvement, which is beyond challenging for working parents. I ask you to strongly consider the proposal that would increase the in-person learning days starting in early November. Thank you. Comment 39, Jamie Kleber. Greetings, Wildcats. I am the parent of 3 K-4 students in Novi, kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 4th grade. I'm writing to support the return of hybrid students to 4 days a week at the elementary level, effective as soon as possible. The delivery of K-4 education for hybrid students has been very frustrating for my family. I really love and respect my kids' teachers, and I know they're working overtime to make everything work, but I feel like some of my kids are getting half an education at this point. The days the students are at home with no contact with teachers, have very little work assigned to them, or very little meaningful work, something I did not anticipate when signing up for this hybrid model. I resorted to purchasing homeschool books and curriculum because I'm worried about my kids' education. But my kids don't learn the same way when mom or dad are teaching or when they're distracted by a sibling. They need and want to be in a classroom with their peers and a teacher and their math. Our neighboring public schools and private schools have shown a successful return to in-person learning, and I encourage the board to consider a 4-day return for K-4 students. Respectfully submitted, Jamie Kleber. Comment 40, Aaron Prowitz. We have 3 children in Novi schools, grades 1, 4, and 6. The delivery of elementary education in a hybrid mode has been a very frustrating experience to date, specifically the remote component. Young children cannot operate the tech platforms on their own, resulting in a lower value education and lost time. Learning how to read, how to write, and the basics of math is very hard for young students when not in traditional classroom environment. We have experienced this firsthand with our 1st and 4th grader. That said, we support the administration and the Board of Education pursuing an immediate return of K-4 hybrid to a 4-day in-person school day. We have witnessed successful returns to in-person learning at districts located in surrounding counties and local private schools. We believe Novi Community School can safely accomplish the goal of transitioning to K-4 hybrid to 4 days in person. Regards, Aaron and Nicole Prowitz. Comment 41, Diana Tio. My 4th grade children are currently benefiting from the hybrid model. Please consider adding additional days in person. As the teachers are doing the best they can, it is obvious that the quality of education is diminished on the virtual days, not to mention the emotional and social skills that are lost staring at the computer screen. Thank you. Comment 42, Panita Dana Thurman. Good evening, Dr. Ruskin, Dr. Matthews, Board of Trustees, and Novi Community School District executive leaders. I am the parent of 3 children who are in the hybrid model. This has been challenging, but I want to express my gratitude to each of you. I feel confident that my children are safe, their well-being is being prioritized, and they are growing in trusted care and teaching so many of our teachers. I recognize how hard this year has been, so thank you. But I'm also reaching out tonight in public comment to ask you to do better on an issue that has long been concerned. I sent a full letter to each of you tonight to make a strong commitment and to take action to increase the number of teachers of color in our district. While it might seem silly or tone deaf in the midst of a pandemic and chaotic learning to be so dogged in my ask for more to be done, know that this is born of both frustration that being patient and asking and hoping for a change has not yielded meaningful change. We hired a high number of staff this year, and again, despite my well-intentioned efforts, little changed in the resulting teachers that were hired. I also know that this is never a good time to make a commitment, especially on something as hard as this. That must change. It is intolerable to me and to many others in our community that the board has not yet made a stronger commitment to this outcome. I'm asking you to take action and make a stronger commitment backed by data, planning, monitoring, and resources. Specifically, my ask is of the Board of Trustees who sets and holds the priorities, and also the administration to do things different than they have done to date to ensure different outcomes. I'm asking you to do two things. Request from administration a publicly shared staffing analysis and reflection of the recent 2020 hiring season, and a recruitment plan for the 2021-22 that prioritizes efforts to increase staff diversity by December 1st. Use this analysis and reflection to better inform how administration will do differently, even if in small steps, to start as soon as hiring for next year. Look for and ask for specific actions that can be taken, monitored, and refined in upcoming year.
Dr. Matthews, time. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Comment 43. Cindy Habler. My son has been a virtual at the Novi Middle School, and it has been outstanding. All 6 of his teachers have been fantastic, and the experience has been a great choice for us. Even with the tech bump over the last 2 days, they hit the ground running, and everything went smooth with his classes today. I cannot thank them enough for their dedication to their classrooms and giving him the opportunity to have hands-on learning 5 days a week with a lot of social interaction as well with classmates. Just a side note, I do know that he has not missed a single class. As a work-from-home mom, I see these things, but some attendance not verified. Is this something to be concerned about as far as attendance is concerned? Again, thank you for the virtual option. It has been amazing. 44, Mary Ann Knight. I am writing to support the elementary K-4 hybrid to increase their days to 4 in-person days. 45, Jenna Richmond. Yes, 4 days for hybrid. 46, Tia Marie Sanders. Good evening, board and leadership. I'm speaking in follow-up to the specific request made earlier and on behalf of the email that was shared with the board and leadership this evening around increasing educator diversity in our district. I am making the case for why. Novi is the kind of strong supportive district that will always be in demand by many. There is increased pressure on the system as we have fewer and fewer candidates of all races entering and quite honestly staying in the teaching profession, which inherently means that it will be even harder to have a pipeline of teachers of color that can ultimately grow into leaders of color. All of this is true. And yet I believe firmly that we have not done enough. We have not made this a priority, consideration, and concern. Increasing diversity is not a luxury to get to someday. It has been and is a growing imperative that is worthy of strong focus by this administration and board. Novi has always prided itself on being ahead of the curve and a leader among its peers. Most importantly, however, I'm advocating as a parent and constituent of the Novi School District that there be a much stronger commitment to increasing diversity of our educator staff. Representation matters, specifically for Black student achievement. There are studies about the identification of Black students into accelerated learning, gifted and talented programs, dependent on the race of the teacher, and more generally, the positive impact of student achievement in having a more diverse teaching workforce. For a district that has demonstrated deep commitment to closing the achievement gap, but having seen limited success in closing this gap, I do not understand why staff diversity has not been prioritized as a mechanism to improve student outcomes. I would hope that our academic office is actually disaggregating student outcome data against the demographics of the teacher as well. A recent study, part of a series of working papers published by the National Bureau of Economic Research, shows that having just one Black teacher not only lowers Black students' high school dropout rates and increases their desire to go to college, but also can make them more likely to enroll in college. All children benefit. I want my non-Black children to be in a building full of adults that match the diversity of our community and of our world. What gets measured gets monitored and prioritized. Setting and communicating a goal sends a strong message about what we value. Current teachers of color are likely to stay. All teachers benefit. People want to feel like they belong and can connect with their peers. It is a huge source of retention data. Ask your current teachers of color if this would help them want to stay. I'm betting it would. Time was up on that one. 47. Lisa White. Is there any consideration to modifying the virtual schedule? 5 days of Zoom and online is a lot for the kids. I've heard teachers have asked for Wednesdays to be a planning day. Will this be considered so that kids have a midweek break to get caught up and a day free of Zoom sessions? 48, Rolando Mason. I support and encourage the decision for hybrid students to go to school in person 4 days a week. Thank you. 49, Crystal Altz. During the meeting, a scenario was described where we switched to 4 days a week at the elementary level. In the scenario, several kids switched to in-person. Then the virtual teacher was left with only 9 kids, and the in-person class had well over 30 kids. Why couldn't the virtual person return to the classroom and the 9 virtual kids be switched to a virtual teacher from another school and join that group of virtual kids? Basically, join 2 virtual classes into one. Just wanted to share my thoughts in case they're useful. 50, Kelly Petz. The students in Novi deserve the best education, and that means in person, especially for elementary students who are the least affected by the virus that has become all political. If surrounding districts are able to give their students in-person education, then Novi should also. But at this point, Novi children are not receiving the best education. 51, Jennifer Petta. Kids at the elementary school level need to be in the classroom. They cannot learn reading, writing, and math from home. Surrounding school districts are choosing to go back full-time. I feel that the educational needs for kids in Novi are not being met. 52, Lisa White. Has there been any additional consideration to bring virtual kids for small group sessions in school? Thank you for all your dedication to the Novi Community School District. And 53, Denise Cummings. Oh, we already read Denise Cummings. It was a repeat. So we are done with comment on agenda items.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Matthews, for your endurance there. And we appreciate hearing comments from the audience, from our public. Do you need a break, Dr. Matthews? Are you ready to keep moving on? You're good. Okay. Sounds perfect. All right. So we will move on to the consent items. The consent item is approval of minutes from the last board meeting. If I can get a recommendation, please, Mrs. Hood.
Yes, I move that the Novi Community Schools Board of Education approve the consent items as presented.
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Hood, supported by Mr. Smith. If we can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Trustee Murphy is absent, excused from 9 o'clock on.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Carries 6-0. Next, we have our action items. We have 2 items tonight. The first one is the personnel report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin, and I will turn to Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. This evening, we have a very brief personnel report consisting of 2 retirements. The first is Suzanne Cohen, adult education teacher. The second is Janice Janke. She is a bus driver. Thank you.
Dr. Ruskin, I think you called on me. We didn't hear you, but I'm gonna make the recommendation. So I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education adopts the personnel report recommendations as presented.
support.
Recommended by Mrs. Hood. Oh, really? It doesn't want to pay attention. Recommended by Mrs. Hood and supported by Mr. Mena. If I can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena.
Comments?
Comments? Yep, we'll take comments first. Seeing none, we're ready for a roll call vote.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. We have no items for information and discussion
We
tonight.
have one more item, Dr. Ruskin, the school nurse.
Oh my goodness. goodness, how could I forget about you, Kathy, after you just
And
were
she's-
so, I mean, she's been waiting the whole night and she was, you know, giving us her expertise and I just passed right over you. We will do.
How embarrassing.
How embarrassing for me. Action item, school nurse. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. During budget conversations pre-COVID, the administration was planning to propose that the board that we move our school nurse from a third-party contract to a district employee. However, with the budget projections in the spring, it was decided to postpone this recommendation. However, through a combination of CARES Act and county money, we have the ability to make the school nurse a permanent full-time district employee. Our recommendation is that we make Kathy Ferris our full-time district nurse. Ms. Ferris was hired part-time in November 2010 to provide school nurse services for our district. In December of 2010, Ms. Ferris's employment was converted to a third-party contract at an hourly rate. Ms. Ferris is a licensed registered nurse with 24 years of pediatric ICU experience at both Children's Hospital of Michigan and Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor in the neonatal unit, where she continues to work full-time. She graduated from Downey University with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree in 1996 and is a certified pediatric nurse, a member of the Michigan Nurses Association, and vice president of the Michigan Association of School Nurses. She also is a region leader for all school nurses in Oakland County. For the 2020-21 school year, the district will use CARES Act and Oakland County resources to fund this position. As we move beyond this year, the cost for the school nurse will be included in the regular budget. So our recommendation would be that the Novi Community School District Board approve Ms. Kathy Ferris as a full-time school nurse.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. If I can get a recommendation, Mrs. Hood?
Yes, I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve Kathy Ferris as the full-time school nurse.
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Hood and supported by Mrs. Roney. Any comments?
I have one comment.
Please.
I would strongly support this recommendation just because without Ms. Ferris's guidance, I would have not managed to navigate through the first 4 weeks of the school year. And so I value her guidance and her counsel, and Lord knows that we have talked on the phone many more times than I would have liked, but she is truly an asset to the district, and my hope is that the board would approve this.
Thank you.
Dr. Matthews. Any other comments, board comment, anyone else? No, okay. I would just like to say thank you, Ms. Ferris, and I'm so sorry for skipping that part. It was just as important as anything else on our agenda.
It's okay. I've been here for 10 years, Danielle.
Okay. All right. So I don't have to be extra nice, but really we do appreciate you. And as Dr. Matthews said, I know that you are confident in really helping us navigate through this really difficult time. So we appreciate you.
Thank you.
If we can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena, I appreciate it.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Mrs. Ferris. Okay, now we will move on to information and discussion, which we have nothing to discuss tonight. So we will move to our first committee report. We had the Capital Projects Committee meet, and our chair is Mr. Mena. So Mr. Mena, if you'd like to give a report, that would be great.
Sure. Just a quick one. We did have a meeting this week. We did discuss an update on some of the happenings going on at the high school, the middle school, Village Oaks, and Orchard Hills. So we got an update on those. And then we had some great discussion on some of the updated plans we have for the Meadows 5th and 6th grade house. I expect that there will be a presentation coming to the board soon, and I think you guys will be really excited with the progress regarding the layout and designs of this beautiful building that we're going to have fronting, as I think we told you before, fronting Taft Road here when we start construction. I am certainly excited with the latest design, and I hope you guys will as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mena. Thank you, Mr. Mena, and thank you for providing that report. As Mr. Mena pointed out, we will be having a full official report to the board. It will probably not be until November, and Dr. Matthews will be providing more information on that in the weekly update to make sure that you are brought abreast to everything going on prior to that. So we appreciate that. Next, we have second opportunity for comments from the audience. This opportunity is for anything that relates to Novi Community School District. Are there any additional comments, Dr. Matthews?
We have 53. Oh, no, wait, I already read those. We have no additional comments.
Thank you very much. And next, we have our superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
You have heard more than enough from me this evening, so I have no report.
Okay, thank you. And we have our administrative reports. So I would like to start with Mr. McIntyre. Thank you.
No report tonight.
Thank you. And Dr. Kinzer?
Thank you. I have two quick items. First, I want to let you know that we are just about through our process of assigning mentors for our Tier 1 and Tier 2 mentees. And we have scheduled our first Mentee Monday, which will be on Monday, October 12th. It will be virtual. And it really will be kind of a replacement for our teacher orientation that we were unable to hold in August, as we typically would have. So we will amend our typical agenda for that session and provide our teachers what we think they most need. And then second, I was unable to participate in the conversation last meeting regarding Mrs. Ferris, and I just wanted to congratulate you on an excellent decision. Had the opportunity to work with Mrs. Ferris for the last 3 years, and she truly is exceptional, and there's never been a time where we need her more than now. So I'm very pleased with this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kinzer, and thank you for your comments. Dr. Weber, you are up next.
Yep, simple thank you to the teachers, to the bus drivers, the administrators, the custodians, the assistants, the parents, and the students who have all shown grace in a very, very difficult time, who've weathered this past 6 months and risen above any kind of name calling or anything like that, and instead have shown that grace and understanding that we're all in this together. So thank you to each of you, and have a good night.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Thank you. No one's going to listen to me. Can you hear me? There we go. Thank you, Dr. Weber. I was just going to say that was the shortest report we have ever heard from you, but then it wouldn't even let me speak. So
I can go longer. I got a book.
No, we're good. We're all set.
I want to go ahead and read one of my favorites right now. That time story.
We're good. We're moving on to board communication. Mr. Smith?
Sure, I'll go first. Thank you, Danielle. One thing for you, Willie, on the Capital Projects Committee, I did hear from the executive director of the Novi Educational Foundation, who's shared an office with Kathy for a number of years, that with her new position, she will be requesting her own private office in one of the buildings. Other than that, I just wanted to let all of you know, and anybody that's still left on the call, that with it being October 1st, I talked with 2 other community members who had some responsibility with the wonderful signs that we've all seen around the district, welcoming back our superheroes. Well, as we get into the election season and those signs become more and more commonplace, I want to encourage anyone on this call and to spread the word. If you see one of those signs and you feel comfortable removing them, please feel free and help us do that. I would hope that they would get placed maybe in the front yard of one of our teachers or administrators' homes if they live in or around the community. I thought that would be cool. If, you know, there's about 108 signs in total. So if we could reposition those in the front yards of our teachers, administrators, school bus drivers, maintenance, everyone on staff, I would appreciate your help in redistributing the signs since they've been up now for about a month. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any more board communication? Mrs. Roney?
Trying to get my stupid mic to work. I attended the Oakland schools. They have a DEI committee that me and Danielle are sitting on. And, you know, it's going to be a 2-year process for us too. But they did give us this really nice from Oakland schools, an equity toolkit, which has a lot of great ideas. Danielle, I believe you shared that with Dr. Matthews. Also, they did, talking to them, one of the, when we opened it up for questions was they're all struggling, even the districts, you know, that are mainly Black students. Every school district is struggling to hire teachers, let alone teachers of color, different ethnicity. So, I mean, Gary, I know you're trying. It's everyone out there is trying as well, and it's a struggle for all of us. So that, you know, if everyone can just be patient, hopefully we'll get a bumper class of, you know, diversified teachers. And then they shared, we had Farmington sharing what they're doing for their DEI. They're actually working with an institute, it's Great Lakes Equity Center out of the University of Indiana. And then they also have a consulting firm here out of Farmington. It's US2 Consulting, and they audit the curriculum to see if we're offering a big enough diverse curriculum. So something, you know, after this 2-year study, things that we might want to look into. Other than that, I have nothing else.
Thank you, Mrs. Roney. Thank you, Mrs. Roney, and thank you for that report. Yes, it's an interesting group of really knowledgeable people who are working through this, and certainly we'll be beginning our conversations and be pulling some best practices from this group to investigate and further discuss on how we can utilize some of these opportunities here in Novi as we and move on through this endeavor of racial justice. So I appreciate that report. Any other board members? A very quiet bunch now. I think it's getting past your bedtimes. No? Okay. So seeing none, I think that I will ask for a motion to adjourn. I was like, no, we want to be on forever. I mean, we could stay here all
I'll
night.
make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting and move on to our closed
Support.
session.
Recommended by Mr. Smith and supported by Mr. Mena. If we-
Actually, we should adjourn to a closed session first and then come back out and adjourn the meeting.
Paul, I kind of forgot about the closed session, to be honest with you. I'm feeling a little tired, so I do appreciate that reminder.
So did I make the wrong motion? Because I said I moved that we adjourn to our closed session. That's what I said. If I said it wrong, someone else can make a different motion.
I think that that's appropriate because we're actually going to physically move out of this meeting space, so we won't be back here to, is that okay, Mr. Cook?
He needs to state the purpose.
Okay. State the purpose, Mr. Smith.
Make a motion that we adjourn this meeting to move into our closed session
For the purpose
for the
of,
purpose of negotiation of our contracts.
support.
Thank you, Paul.
Recommended by Mr. Smith and supported by Mr. Cook. Now that we're all clear